The night was unusually cold, the kind of cold that seemed to gnaw at the bones and seep into the very soul. In Paris, the streets were empty, cobbled lanes slick with the sheen of recent rain, reflecting the flickering glow of torches. Above the quiet city, the spires of Notre Dame loomed like silent witnesses to a tragedy that was about to unfold. Inside the royal palaces, whispers of a conspiracy curled through corridors, each word a dagger of fear and anticipation. But the common citizens knew nothing of the storm that would descend upon the most powerful knights in Christendom, the Knights Templar. It began in the early hours before the sun dared to rise. Horsemen, cloaked in shadows, moved swiftly through narrow alleys, their boots striking sparks against the stone. They carried lists, names written in meticulous handwriting, the names of men who had sworn their lives to faith, to brotherhood, to a cause that had once seemed invincible. Yet on this night, invincibility would prove to be a fragile illusion. The city's gates were silent, the usual sounds of guards and merchants replaced by an oppressive stillness. Then came the first knocks, sharp and unyielding, echoing against the wooden doors of Templar residences. Each knock was a verdict, each echo a sentence. Inside one of the Templar houses, candles flickered as the night stirred, sensing the dread before it fully arrived. They had received no warning, no hint of betrayal, yet instinct, honed over years of battle and discipline, whispered that something was amiss. The doors burst open. Torches cast grotesque shadows on the walls, turning familiar hallways into a labyrinth of fear. Soldiers, their faces obscured by masks, moved like predators. They demanded compliance, but the Templars, sworn defenders of faith, did not yield easily. Their hands, usually steady with sword and shield, trembled, not with cowardice, but with the tension of the unknown. The arrests were swift, almost surgical. Men who had led armies, defended pilgrims, and commanded castles now found themselves stripped of dignity in a matter of moments. Chains clinked ominously as they were bound, the sound like the tolling of a funeral bell. Some whispered prayers, others cursed silently, eyes burning with disbelief. What treachery had led them to this fate? Their minds raced back to distant battlefields, to Jerusalem's scorching sands, to nights spent in whispered council under starlit skies. How could such men, devoted entirely to their order, to God, be accused of crimes so monstrous that the Church itself had sanctioned their eradication? The streets were alive with a tension that no one dared speak of openly. Windows shuttered, children hidden beneath beds, merchants frozen behind counters. News traveled quickly in hushed tones. The Templars, the once untouchable guardians of faith and fortune, were being hunted, betrayed, arrested. And yet, even as they were taken, there was a strange sense of calm among the knights, a silent acknowledgement that the forces arrayed against them were far more dangerous than swords. The threat was not just death. It was erasure. What they possessed, what they had sworn to protect, must vanish with them. Secrets older than kingdoms themselves were at stake. The processions to the dungeons were long, the city's heart darkened by fear and curiosity. Torchlight flickered across the walls, revealing the haunted faces of the captured. Each man a monument to courage and despair intertwined. And with each step, rumors grew. What were they accused of? Alchemy? Heresy? Sorcery? Some claimed to have seen the Templars in secret rituals. Others insisted the accusations were mere fabrications of a greedy king. Yet none knew the truth, and the truth, if it existed, was more terrifying than anyone could imagine. For in the shadows of Paris, in the chambers now holding the Order's mightiest knights, lay hints of knowledge so dangerous that even God's representatives feared it. As the night deepened, interrogations began. Torches cast cruel light on the stone floors as soldiers, instructed by the king, demanded confessions. The Templars, masters of patience and endurance, resisted as best they could. Some succumbed quickly, broken not only by physical pain but by the unbearable tension of betrayal. Others held firm, their eyes burning with quiet fury. The world outside, indifferent and ignorant, moved on, unaware that in these cells, the foundations of Europe's most secretive power were being shattered, piece by piece. And yet, even in this descent into chaos, there was an undercurrent of something more. The Templars, despite their chains and fear, seemed to carry a silent assurance that their story would not end in this night, that some part of their order, some fragment of their hidden treasures and forbidden knowledge, would endure beyond the torches, beyond the swords, beyond the flames of accusation. It was this unspoken promise that lent a strange majesty to their suffering, a dignity amidst humiliation, a defiance that could not be entirely extinguished. Outside, the city slept uneasily, unaware of the tremors of history shaking the very foundations of its streets. Somewhere, hidden from the eyes of soldiers and spies, the first clues of the Templar secrets had begun their slow, inexorable journey into the shadows of the world. What treasures did they hide? What knowledge had they acquired in the Holy Lands? And why had their enemies been so desperate not only to destroy the knights but to erase all traces of what they had guarded? These questions hung in the cold Parisian air like an unseen specter, waiting for centuries to reveal themselves to the curious, the brave, and the seekers of history's deepest mysteries. By the time the first light of dawn touched the rooftops, the city's silence had deepened into something heavier, almost reverent. Paris had witnessed the fall of a mighty order, but it could not yet comprehend the echoes that would resonate for generations. The Templars, their bodies confined but their secrets still alive, had vanished from public view, leaving behind only questions, rumors, and the faint, almost imperceptible glow of treasures and knowledge lost to the ages. And in that quiet, history's most enduring question whispered itself to anyone who dared listen. What was so dangerous that it had to be erased forever? Long before the shadows of betrayal fell upon Paris, long before the arrests and the flames, the Knights Templar were born in a world teeming with chaos and opportunity. The year was 1119, and Jerusalem, the jewel of the Holy Land, was a city divided by conflict, sacred to millions, and yet constantly under threat. Pilgrims traveled from distant lands, their hearts full of faith, but their paths fraught with danger. Bandits, rival factions, and relentless waves of marauders turned sacred journeys into perilous odysseys. It was in this crucible of fear and devotion that a small band of men emerged, bound not by blood but by an unshakable purpose, to protect the pilgrims and defend the holy city. Hugh de Payens, a nobleman of quiet strength, became the first master of this fledgling order. He gathered 8 companions, men of courage and conviction, willing to trade comfort and safety for vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They were monks in the eyes of God, but warriors on the ground, clad in simple white mantles marked with the blood-red cross. There was an almost otherworldly discipline to their lives. Each day began before dawn, with prayers whispered in the stillness of stone chapels, followed by training that would harden their bodies and sharpen their minds. Their mission was simple in words but impossible in execution. Protect the faithful, defend the holy, and endure the harsh realities of war with unwavering devotion. But the Templars were more than soldiers. They were architects of a vision that blurred the line between sacred duty and worldly power. They built fortresses along treacherous passes, bridges over swollen rivers, and safe houses that became lifelines for those who dared to venture to Jerusalem. Their reputation grew quickly, not merely because of their skill with sword and shield, but because of the extraordinary trust they inspired. Kings, nobles, and churchmen saw them as instruments of divine will, a force that could tip the scales in battles far larger than any one city or castle. Their influence, initially humble, began to ripple across Europe, planting seeds of awe and envy alike. What set the Templars apart was a combination of devotion and innovation. They created systems to transfer wealth across great distances, a primitive form of banking that allowed pilgrims to deposit funds in one city and retrieve them in another. Castles rose under their meticulous oversight, blending unassailable military design with functional beauty. And behind it all, a veil of secrecy shrouded their inner workings. What they prayed over, what they swore to protect, and what they whispered only among themselves remained hidden from outsiders. This blend of piety, discipline, and mystery created a mythic aura that few could challenge, and fewer still could resist. Yet the Templars were not without contradiction. They were monks who killed, warriors who prayed, men sworn to poverty who amassed extraordinary wealth. It was a delicate balance, and one that made them both admired and feared. As their power grew, so too did the whispers. Rumors of hidden rituals, secret treasures, and knowledge gleaned from journeys to lands few Europeans had ever seen. Some said they had discovered relics of unimaginable significance, artifacts that could shift the tides of faith itself. Others claimed that their strength lay not in material wealth, but in an understanding of the world so profound it bordered on the forbidden. Regardless of truth or legend, the aura of mystery surrounding the Templars only deepened their allure and intensified the envy of kings and clergy alike. Their rise was swift and yet deliberate. While other knights sought glory in battle or wealth in conquest, the Templars cultivated a reputation of incorruptibility, loyalty, and fearlessness. They moved with precision, responding to threats with a combination of intelligence, courage, and unwavering discipline. Pilgrims spoke of them in hushed tones, recounting stories of knights who would appear from nowhere to defend the defenseless, who would face impossible odds and emerge victorious. Each success, each miracle, wove the threads of legend that would bind the Templars to history forever. Even in the early years, tension simmered beneath the surface. Kings coveted their wealth, popes depended on their support, rivals feared their influence. And yet, the Templars operated above politics, or so it seemed. Their loyalty was to God, and their focus unwavering. But as with all great powers, their virtues carried seeds of their own undoing. The same discipline and secrecy that protected them in Jerusalem would, centuries later, become a source of suspicion, a reason to brand them heretics and traitors. Their destiny was both glorious and perilous, forged in the fires of devotion and tempered by the cold steel of war. In the streets of Jerusalem, amid the heat of battle and the chants of pilgrims, the Templars began to leave their mark, not only on the Holy Land but on the imagination of Europe. They were men apart, men whose courage seemed almost unnatural, whose devotion was absolute, whose presence inspired awe and fear in equal measure. And yet, beneath the armor and the devotion, human beings struggled with doubt, fear, and desire. They longed for home, for warmth, for the simple comforts they had forsaken. They prayed for guidance, for protection, for understanding of the burdens they bore. It was in this paradox, the tension between the sacred and the worldly, between humility and power, that the Templar's story truly begins. The foundation laid in these early years, amid the narrow alleys, the sun-scorched deserts, and the echoing prayers, would ripple across centuries. Their rise, their influence, and the secrets they carried would make them one of the most extraordinary orders the world had ever known. And though few would understand it at the time, the decisions made in these formative years, the vows, the battles, the treasures safeguarded, and the knowledge collected, would set the stage for a destiny both legendary and tragic, culminating in a night that would shock Paris, and perhaps the world. The Templars, once a small band of devout knights, had grown into something that seemed almost larger than life. Their white mantles, crossed with crimson, became a symbol not only of piety but of power, courage, and a presence that commanded respect across Europe. From the windswept coasts of Portugal to the bustling streets of Paris, whispers of the order's wealth and influence circulated like wildfire. Merchants, nobles, and kings spoke of the Templars with awe, tinged with envy and fear. They had begun as humble guardians of pilgrims, yet now they wielded power rivaling monarchs, and their influence stretched far beyond the battlefield. Their rise was methodical, almost surgical. The Templars mastered a system that combined military might with financial ingenuity. Castles rose along vital routes, not only to protect Christian holdings in the Holy Land but to assert the order's presence in a way that no secular power could ignore. Within these fortresses, knights trained relentlessly, blending discipline with devotion, their bodies and minds sharpened to endure both physical and spiritual challenges. They developed intelligence networks to monitor threats, both local and distant, and their knowledge of terrain, trade routes, and political allegiances made them indispensable to kings and popes alike. Perhaps their most revolutionary achievement lay not in their swords or their fortresses, but in the ways they handled wealth. They developed a system of letters of credit, allowing pilgrims to deposit funds in one city and withdraw them in another, an early form of international banking. Nobles and monarchs entrusted the Templars with fortunes beyond imagination, confident that their gold, jewels, and sacred relics were safe behind the impenetrable walls of Templar fortresses. Yet, with great wealth came great suspicion. Rival factions, jealous of the order's influence and fearful of its autonomy, began to murmur behind closed doors. What secrets were held within those white mantles, behind those stone walls? What could an organization so powerful, so disciplined, and so secretive truly be hiding? It was not just the wealth that made the Templars formidable. They possessed a strategic genius honed in the crucible of the Crusades. On the battlefields of the Holy Land, they had learned to anticipate the enemy's moves, to strike with precision, and to endure hardships that would have broken ordinary men. Their skill earned them both reverence and fear. A Templar charge could turn the tide of battle. A fortress defended by them was nearly impenetrable, and their ability to coordinate across continents was unmatched. This combination of military prowess and financial ingenuity created an aura of invincibility, a sense that the Templars were not merely men but instruments of divine will. Yet, for all their outward power, there was a quiet mystery that clung to the order like a shadow. The Templars were known to carry secret rituals, obscure symbols, and enigmatic codes that outsiders could never fully understand. Some spoke of relics so sacred that merely possessing them could confer authority over kings or knowledge forbidden by the Church itself. Others hinted at knowledge gained from journeys to the East, ideas and philosophies so profound they could reshape entire civilizations. While some dismissed these stories as legend, the very fact that such tales persisted added to the fear and fascination surrounding the order. The Templars had become not only a military and financial power, but a symbol of hidden truths, a puzzle that the world was desperate to decipher. Their influence began to touch every corner of Europe. Nobles sought their counsel in matters of war and diplomacy. Kings entrusted them with sensitive missions, aware that the order's loyalty to God often transcended personal or political gain. Pilgrims trusted them with their lives, merchants with their wealth, and the faithful with their prayers. And yet, it was precisely this combination of autonomy and authority that made the Templars a threat to those who coveted power. Monarchs feared that an organization beholden only to God could never be controlled, that their wealth and influence could challenge crowns, destabilize kingdoms, and defy decrees. The seeds of envy, suspicion, and eventual betrayal were quietly planted even as the order expanded its reach. The Templars' castles and fortresses were more than military installations. They were symbols of order and discipline. Towers rose above valleys, walls stretched across hillsides, and battlements overlooked roads vital to trade and pilgrimage. Within these fortresses, the knights lived with a rhythm of ritual and training, of prayer and study. Scribes meticulously recorded transactions, communications, and chronicles of battle, preserving knowledge that would later inspire fascination and speculation. The architecture itself was a testament to strategy, devotion, and secrecy. Hidden passages, concealed chambers, and subterranean tunnels hinted at a world beyond what outsiders could see. But the order's expansion was not without conflict. Rival knights, jealous lords, and scheming politicians sought opportunities to undermine them. Allegiances shifted, rumors spread, and the Templars found themselves navigating a web of intrigue as complex as any battlefield maneuver. Yet, despite external pressures, the order maintained its discipline, its focus, and its sense of divine purpose. Even in Europe, far from the deserts of the Holy Land, the Templars projected the aura of invincibility that had become their signature. They were warriors, bankers, architects, scholars, and guardians of secrets, all in one, and the world watched with a mixture of admiration and dread. One of the most fascinating aspects of their rise was the paradox of visibility and secrecy. The Templars' wealth and power were undeniable, yet what they truly valued, the relics, knowledge, and sacred artifacts they had collected, remained hidden. It was this duality that made them legendary. They could be seen, revered, and envied, but their most important possessions were invisible, protected by oaths, discipline, and cunning. The tension between what the world could see and what it could not created an almost mythic aura, a sense that the Templars were simultaneously part of society and beyond it, existing in a space that few could enter and even fewer could understand. By the late 12th century, the Templars were no longer merely knights. They had become a force that reshaped Europe's political and economic landscape. Their rise was a testament to vision, discipline, and audacity, but it also sowed the seeds of vulnerability. For as history has shown, those who accumulate power in isolation, who guard secrets too closely, and who inspire envy and fear in others, are never safe from betrayal. The very qualities that had elevated the Templars, discipline, secrecy, courage, and devotion, would one day make them a target, culminating in a night that would shock the world and set in motion a chain of events that historians and treasure hunters would still debate centuries later. And yet, even in their height of power, there lingered an almost imperceptible sense of destiny. The Templars had risen not only to protect pilgrims or accumulate wealth, but perhaps to guard something greater, secrets that were not meant to be understood by the ordinary world. Their castles, their fortresses, their wealth, and even their influence were instruments of something far more profound. This hidden purpose, shrouded in devotion and mystery, would make their fall all the more dramatic, their legacy all the more tantalizing, and their story one that generations would whisper about with awe, fear, and unending curiosity. The Templars' power was not measured merely in castles, lands, or wealth. It was measured in secrets. Behind the white mantles and the red crosses, hidden in the fortified walls and the shadowed vaults of their strongholds, lay treasures so extraordinary that few could even imagine them. Gold, silver, and jewels sparkled in inventories, but these were only the surface. The true treasures of the order were artifacts steeped in history, faith, and mystery. Relics that were said to hold the weight of centuries, the whispers of prophets, and perhaps even the very essence of divine power. To outsiders, these treasures seemed like mere wealth, but to the Templars, they were the keys to a purpose far greater, a mission that had begun in the sacred streets of Jerusalem. Some spoke in hushed tones of sacred chalices, cups that had once graced the tables of kings and prophets. Others claimed the order had secured fragments of the true cross, the nails that had pierced Christ, or the shroud that had wrapped his body. Legends spoke of scrolls containing forbidden knowledge, astronomy, alchemy, and philosophy gleaned from the East, secrets that could challenge the very foundations of understanding. Some whispered of relics lost in antiquity, now safeguarded within Templar vaults, protected by locks, curses, and the unwavering loyalty of knights who had sworn their lives to God and to secrecy. The sheer audacity of what they had hidden struck fear and wonder into those who dared speculate. And yet, the Templars' treasures were not only spiritual, they were practical. Maps of far-off lands, coded manuscripts detailing trade routes, lists of debts owed to kings and nobles, and vast stores of gold provided the order with influence across Europe. They were bankers, and in their vaults lay the wealth of monarchs and merchants alike, stored with an almost obsessive attention to detail. The combination of material and spiritual wealth made the Templars unique, a power that could not easily be contained. Their treasures were not mere objects. They were instruments of influence, leverage over kings, protection for pilgrims, and perhaps, in ways that were never recorded, keys to mysteries that could shift the course of history itself. The secrecy surrounding these treasures was almost religious. Only the highest-ranking members were ever allowed to access the deepest vaults. Lower-ranked knights were trusted to defend the order and enforce its discipline, but they were rarely privy to the inner sanctums where the true power was held. Stories circulated of chambers sealed by intricate mechanisms, hidden beneath castles, in caves, or behind false walls. Some vaults were said to be enchanted with wards and symbols that could only be interpreted by those initiated into the most sacred rites. Even centuries later, explorers and historians would marvel at the ingenuity, imagining that some treasures had never been touched by human hands, lying silently, waiting for the world to forget them, as if time itself were their guardian. The most tantalizing of all the Templar legends centered on the Holy Grail. Some claimed the order had discovered the cup from which Christ had drunk at the Last Supper, a vessel infused with divine significance. Others argued that the Grail was a metaphor, a symbolic object whose true meaning could only be understood by those with knowledge of the East, of sacred geometry, or of ancient texts that the Templars alone had access to. Regardless of interpretation, the Grail became a focal point of speculation, inspiring both reverence and obsession. To the Templars, the cup, real or symbolic, represented not only faith but ultimate authority, a treasure whose significance transcended the mundane world. The Ark of the Covenant, too, was said to have passed briefly into Templar hands. Though evidence is scarce and often contradictory, some chroniclers claimed that the Knights transported the Ark from Jerusalem before the city's fall. It was a claim dismissed by skeptics as fantasy, yet the very existence of such stories demonstrates the aura surrounding the order. The idea that the Templars might have possessed objects of unimaginable power, objects that could threaten kings or inspire revolutions of thought, made them both revered and feared. It was no wonder that envy and suspicion followed them wherever they went, culminating centuries later in plots designed to destroy not just men, but knowledge and legacy. But the treasures of the Templars were not always grandiose relics. Many were subtler yet equally vital. Books of philosophy, maps of forgotten cities, rare manuscripts detailing astronomical observations, and records of lost civilizations were collected with painstaking care. These items, seemingly mundane to the untrained eye, represented wisdom and foresight. Knowledge, after all, was power, and the Templars understood that true influence came not only from armies or gold but from understanding the world in ways others could not. This duality, material and intellectual wealth, set the Templars apart from any other organization of their time. The allure of these treasures inspired both admiration and fear. Tales of hidden Templar gold, vast enough to rival kingdoms, persisted for centuries. Some stories claimed that when the arrests came, knights had secreted away portions of their wealth, burying caches in remote forests, mountains, and riverbanks. Others suggested that treasures were smuggled out of Europe entirely, carried to Portugal, Scotland, or even distant shores where the Templars might rebuild in secret. Each tale added layers to the legend, creating a tapestry of mystery that continues to captivate historians, treasure hunters, and curious minds alike. And yet, amidst all speculation, one truth remained indisputable. The treasures were inseparable from the knights themselves. They represented the order's devotion, discipline, and audacity. To lose the treasures would not only be to lose wealth, it would be to erase centuries of faith, strategy, and vision. It is perhaps this understanding that made their enemies so relentless. Kings and popes, motivated by envy, debt, or fear of uncontrolled power, sought not only to destroy the Templars but to ensure that what they had safeguarded vanished entirely from the world. The Order's treasures, therefore, became both a prize and a threat, a symbol of divine authority and human ambition intertwined. Even as modern historians debate which legends are true and which are embellishment, the idea of Templar treasures has endured. It is not just the gold or relics that fascinate, but the notion of knowledge and power carefully hidden from the world. The idea that an order of knights could amass not only material wealth but sacred, transformative secrets creates a tension that continues to captivate our imagination. What did the Templars know that others did not? What did they guard so fiercely that betrayal and eradication seemed the only solution? These questions linger in the shadows, compelling us to look closer, to wonder, and to imagine a world in which the hidden treasures of the Templars may still exist, waiting to be discovered. In the end, the story of the Templar treasures is not just a tale of wealth, mystery, and intrigue. It is a story of human ambition, of devotion and secrecy, of courage and caution. It is the story of a brotherhood that dared to hold the unthinkable, that sought to preserve knowledge, faith, and power against all odds. And it is this very story that sets the stage for the betrayals, the arrests, and the secrets that would echo through history, leaving behind questions still unanswered, mysteries still unsolved, and treasures that continue to tantalize generations of seekers. The Crusades were brutal, chaotic, and drenched in both faith and blood. For the Knights of the Templar Order, they were more than battles. They were the crucible in which their courage, discipline, and cunning were forged. The Holy Land, with its golden deserts, rocky hills, and sun-scorched cities, became both a proving ground and a prison. Every journey through hostile territory demanded vigilance, and every pilgrimage carried the shadow of death. The Templars, sworn to protect the faithful, became guardians of pilgrims navigating this treacherous land, their presence a small hope amid overwhelming danger. Pilgrims arrived from distant lands, their eyes wide with devotion but often unprepared for the perils that awaited them. Bandits lurked in narrow passes, hostile armies roamed the countryside, and even the natural elements were merciless. Heat scorched the skin by day, and bitter cold gnawed at bones by night. Hunger and thirst were constant companions, yet the knights moved with a purpose that transcended suffering. Their white mantles, bright against the dusty terrain, were symbols of hope, a sign that someone was watching over the faithful. And for those who witnessed them in battle, the Templars were something more than men. They were seemingly invincible warriors, disciplined, fearless, and utterly relentless. Yet their heroism was tempered by the harsh realities of war. The Templars faced armies far larger than their own, sieges that tested their fortresses to the limit, and ambushes in unforgiving terrain. They fought not for conquest, but for protection, their swords cutting paths through chaos to safeguard pilgrims and hold critical strongholds. The stakes were always high, and failure was unthinkable. Each battle was a test of both skill and faith, a demonstration of devotion to God and to the Brotherhood. And yet, despite their discipline, the Templars were human. They suffered fear, exhaustion, and loss. Friends fell beside them, and the cries of the dying haunted both day and night. Their courage inspired awe and fear alike. Muslim chroniclers wrote of them as a strange and terrifying force, unwavering in battle and seemingly immune to pain. Christian allies revered them for their loyalty and martial skill, while kings and nobles relied on their strategic insight. The Templars' reputation was carefully cultivated, yet earned, a combination of skill, discipline, and an unshakable commitment to a purpose greater than themselves. Even the smallest skirmish became a demonstration of both military genius and spiritual devotion, a reminder that these knights were more than soldiers. They were the embodiment of faith in action. The Templars also became masters of logistics and strategy. Supply lines had to be maintained across vast deserts, fortresses reinforced under constant threat, and communication with distant European patrons ensured. They learned to anticipate the movements of enemies, to strike with precision, and to fortify positions in ways that often seemed impenetrable. Castles built by the Templars were not merely defensive structures. They were symbols of order and power, projecting authority over lands that were otherwise fragmented and chaotic. Every stone, every tower, every hidden passage was placed with meticulous care, a testament to both military genius and unwavering devotion. Despite their outward strength, the human stakes were immense. Knights who had sworn vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience confronted the brutal reality of war. Hunger, thirst, disease, and exhaustion were constant threats, yet they endured, bound by faith and brotherhood. They mourned fallen comrades in silence, buried them in sacred soil, and pressed onward, knowing that retreat was not an option. Each decision carried weight, each battle could mean life or death, not just for themselves but for the pilgrims they guarded and the people who depended on their vigilance. The Templars' courage was not abstract. It was tangible, costly, and profoundly human. The emotional dimension of their service was no less significant than the physical. Fear was constant, but it was tempered by purpose. Moments of doubt, fleeting though they were countered by prayer, ritual, and the presence of brothers who shared the same burdens. Loyalty became more than a vow. It became a lifeline. The men trusted one another with their lives in ways that ordinary soldiers could not. Every mission, every escort, every siege reinforced bonds that were unbreakable even under the weight of unimaginable hardship. Faith was their armor, and brotherhood their shield. And yet, within this crucible of war, shadows of ambition and secrecy also emerged. The Templars encountered relics, manuscripts, and artifacts in the Holy Land, items whose significance went beyond the immediate military or spiritual needs of the moment. Some believed these discoveries were ordinary religious objects. Others suspected they held knowledge that could change the course of history. Whatever their true nature, the Templars' discretion was absolute. No outsider, no rival, no chronicler could ever fully understand the depth of what they possessed or the reasons for the secrecy that surrounded them. Even as they defended pilgrims and holy sites, the Templars faced moral and ethical dilemmas that tested their faith. They were men sworn to peace and prayer, yet compelled to wield lethal force with precision. They struggled with the tension between divine mandate and human instinct, between the sanctity of life and the necessities of survival. Their victories and losses left indelible marks, not just on the maps of the Crusades, but on the hearts and minds of those who lived and died alongside them. Each battlefield became a stage where devotion, courage, and the weight of destiny played out in relentless, unflinching reality. The human stories embedded within these campaigns are staggering. A knight might ride through blistering heat to reach a group of stranded pilgrims, only to discover the route behind him cut off by enemy forces. Another might oversee the construction of a fortress under siege, knowing that the slightest misstep could mean annihilation for all inside. Letters sent home were rare, and the news of deaths and victories traveled slowly, filtered through layers of political intrigue and the fog of war. Yet despite the chaos, the order's discipline held firm, a testament to the enduring strength of their structure and their faith. The Crusades, in essence, were the stage upon which the Templars honed everything that would define them: courage, loyalty, strategy, discipline, secrecy, and the subtle accumulation of both material and spiritual power. Every encounter, every journey, every narrow escape added layers to the legend that would echo across centuries. And it was within this context, the relentless deserts, the ancient cities, the danger-laden roads, that the Templars' mystique was born. They became not merely knights of God, but symbols of endurance, guardians of secrets, and harbingers of a legacy that would one day stretch far beyond the Holy Land, into the very heart of Europe, and ultimately, into the shadows of history itself. The Crusades left scars, but they also left treasures, both visible and invisible. The lessons learned, the relics secured, and the knowledge gathered during these campaigns were seeds of power that would grow in ways no contemporary observer could fully comprehend. And as the Templars returned to Europe, weary, battle-hardened, and carrying the fruits of their dangerous journeys, they brought with them more than wealth and tales of heroism. They brought a hidden world of influence, mystery, and secrets that would later make them both envied and feared, admired and hunted. Jerusalem's Temple Mount was a place of awe, of devotion, and of mysteries that seemed older than time itself. To the Knights Templar, it was more than a strategic location. It was sacred ground, a site where heaven and earth seemed to brush against one another, where the echoes of history whispered through stone and dust. Every corner, every archway, every hidden chamber seemed to hum with significance, as if the air itself had absorbed the prayers, secrets, and struggles of millennia. For the Templars, the Temple Mount was both a fortress and a spiritual nexus, a place where duty and destiny intertwined in ways that few could understand. The Order's earliest missions in Jerusalem placed them in direct contact with the remnants of this ancient site. They walked the stones once trodden by priests, prophets, and kings. They studied its architecture, noting hidden passages, underground chambers, and symbolic carvings whose meanings were often obscure even to scholars of the time. Some chroniclers hinted that beneath the Temple Mount lay treasures older than Christianity itself: relics from Solomon's time, sacred vessels, or texts containing knowledge deemed too dangerous or powerful to be widely known. The Templars, sworn to secrecy, became the custodians of a hidden legacy that would eventually fuel centuries of speculation and myth. It is said that the Templars discovered chambers containing artifacts of extraordinary importance, items that could shift understanding of history, faith, or even human potential. Some accounts speak of golden relics, intricately carved objects, and scrolls written in languages few could decipher. Others suggest more mystical discoveries: symbols and inscriptions that hinted at hidden knowledge, rituals, or truths suppressed by religious authorities. These were not simple treasures to be displayed. They were guarded with solemn devotion, hidden beneath layers of stone, accessible only to those initiated into the deepest mysteries of the order. The nature of these discoveries remains tantalizingly unclear. Some historians argue that the Templars may have found fragments of the Ark of the Covenant, lost scrolls from Solomon's temple, or other sacred objects whose significance could not be overstated. Others suggest the treasures were symbolic, a kind of spiritual knowledge encoded in objects, structures, and ceremonies, accessible only to those with the insight and dedication to understand them. Regardless of their physical form, the idea that the Templars had access to knowledge or artifacts of such magnitude infused their order with a sense of purpose and danger unmatched by any other institution of the time. It was not only the objects themselves that were significant, but the knowledge they represented. Jerusalem had long been a crossroads of civilizations, a repository of learning, religion, and power. The Templars, through their presence and devotion, were in a position to access and protect this knowledge. Ancient texts, accounts of lost rituals, and observations of celestial phenomena may have passed through their hands, carefully recorded, hidden, or transported back to Europe. The order's vaults, its castles, and even its monasteries may have held more than material wealth. They may have preserved ideas that challenged conventional understanding of the world. This sacred duty also introduced a profound tension. The Templars were knights, warriors first, yet they were also guardians of secrets, scholars in their own right. The discipline required to protect such knowledge was immense. One misstep, one betrayal, could bring ruin not only to the knights themselves but to the treasures they had vowed to defend. And yet, human curiosity and ambition were ever present, even within the order. Some may have glimpsed hints of power beyond comprehension and wondered at the possibilities. Others accepted their role with humility, understanding that some truths were not meant for all eyes. The Templars' connection to the Temple Mount also placed them at the center of political and spiritual conflict. Kings, clergy, and rival factions recognized the importance of the site, and control over it was both a strategic and symbolic victory. Yet the knights operated in a sphere beyond ordinary politics, beholden to God and to their own code. Their authority, derived from devotion and secrecy, allowed them to act independently, to safeguard treasures that others could not fully appreciate or understand. This autonomy, while empowering, would later make them vulnerable to envy, fear, and ultimately betrayal. Every mission to Jerusalem reinforced the duality of the Templar experience: devotion and danger, faith and violence, secrecy and power. Their time on the Temple Mount was a mixture of reverence, labor, and vigilance. They walked in the shadow of sacred history, aware that what they guarded could alter the course of nations or the perception of the divine. And as they returned to Europe, carrying what they could of these hidden legacies, they left behind questions that would linger for centuries. What had they seen in the secret chambers? What knowledge had been preserved, and what had been destroyed or hidden from the world? The aura of mystery surrounding the Temple Mount discoveries became a defining element of the Templar legend. Chroniclers, historians, and even rival orders speculated endlessly about the treasures and knowledge concealed there. Some stories were exaggerated, others entirely fabricated, but the consistency of whispers over centuries suggests that something extraordinary had indeed occurred. The Templars' meticulous care, their obsession with secrecy, and their unwavering devotion created a legacy that blended fact and myth, history and legend, leaving behind a trail that continues to intrigue scholars, explorers, and seekers of the hidden to this very day. Even centuries later, the mere mention of the Temple Mount evokes visions of secret chambers, sacred relics, and a knowledge so profound it could challenge the foundations of understanding. For the Templars, the experience was transformative. It shaped their identity, their purpose, and the very ethos of their order. They were not merely soldiers. They were guardians of history, of faith, and perhaps even of truths that the world was not ready to confront. This duality of earthly courage and spiritual guardianship set the stage for the trials, betrayals, and legendary treasures that would define their legacy long after their order was disbanded. And so, the Templars' time on the Temple Mount remains a chapter shrouded in wonder, fear, and speculation. Their discoveries, hidden from public view, were the seeds of stories that would endure for centuries. The artifacts they safeguarded, the knowledge they preserved, and the devotion they displayed created a tension between visibility and secrecy, power and humility, faith and ambition. It was in this tension, in this delicate balance between what was known and what was hidden, that the true essence of the Knights Templar began to take shape, a legacy that would eventually make them one of the most enigmatic and fascinating orders in history. Even as the Knights Templar returned to Europe from the deserts of the Holy Land, their rise and power drew more than admiration. It attracted envy, suspicion, and fear. Kings and nobles, who once welcomed their military skill and financial acumen, began to view the order with unease. Here were men who owed loyalty to no crown, who possessed wealth rivaling kingdoms, and who controlled secret knowledge few dared to question. Their independence, once a mark of divine favor, became a source of paranoia. Whispered accusations began to circulate in the halls of power. The Templars were no longer simply guardians of faith. They were a threat, a challenge to earthly authority. King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair, epitomized this growing tension. Deeply in debt from wars and extravagant spending, he eyed the immense wealth of the Templars with both desire and suspicion. To him, they were more than an independent order. They were a repository of riches, influence, and secrets that could be seized to secure his kingdom's future and augment his own power. But wealth alone was not the danger. It was the perception of untouchable authority. Philip feared that a group so disciplined, so secretive, and so devoted to God might one day defy him or the papacy itself. He began to craft a plan, one that combined cunning, political manipulation, and ruthless ambition. The tension was compounded by rumors, some whispered, others strategically propagated. Tales of heresy, secret rituals, and blasphemous practices began to circulate, suggesting that the Templars had strayed from their sacred mission. Accounts spoke of unholy ceremonies, of denying Christ, of worshipping idols unknown to the faithful. Whether these rumors were true or carefully constructed lies, they served their purpose: to cast doubt on the order's integrity and to prepare public opinion for a dramatic confrontation. The seeds of betrayal, carefully sown by those who coveted power, began to sprout in the fertile soil of fear and suspicion. In the shadows, Philip worked tirelessly, cultivating allies within the church who would support his ambitions. Pope Clement V, politically vulnerable and eager to maintain favor with the French crown, became an unwitting partner in the plot. The Pope had relied on the Templars for financial support, military counsel, and influence across Europe. Yet the combination of Philip's pressure, the growing accusations of heresy, and the political climate created a moment ripe for manipulation. Philip's strategy was meticulous. He would not merely attack the Templars physically. He would destroy their reputation, their unity, and their ability to defend themselves in the eyes of Christendom. On a chilling October night in 1307, the culmination of this plotting unfolded. Across France, coordinated arrests took place. Knights were seized in their homes and castles, often in the dead of night. Torches flickered in narrow streets, echoing the terror that had been brewing for decades. The Templars were bound, their mantles removed, their dignity stripped away with precision and deliberation. Philip's soldiers acted with efficiency, leaving few opportunities for escape, and ensuring that the narrative of guilt could be crafted before any defense could be mounted. For the Templars, trained in discipline and battle, the suddenness of betrayal was both shocking and surreal. Interrogations followed quickly, accompanied by torture, fear, and isolation. Knights were confronted with allegations so heinous they seemed impossible, forced to deny their faith, their vows, and their honor. Confessions were extracted, often under duress, and used to justify the eradication of the order. Even those who remained steadfast found themselves at the mercy of political machinations beyond their control. The very virtues that had sustained the Templars, discipline, secrecy, and loyalty, were turned against them, twisted into evidence of heresy and corruption. The betrayal was absolute, a carefully orchestrated collapse designed to erase not just men, but an entire legacy. Yet, amid the darkness of these events, a paradox remained. The Templars' secrets, their treasures, and their knowledge were not entirely seized or destroyed. Many believe that knights had anticipated the danger, hiding portions of wealth, sacred relics, and documents in secret locations. Underground tunnels, remote castles, and even distant lands became repositories for the treasures they had guarded so fiercely. Though the order itself was being dismantled, its essence, its knowledge, and some of its physical wealth endured, slipping beyond the grasp of those who sought to control it. This partial preservation ensured that the legend of the Templars would live on, even as their physical presence was eradicated. The betrayal was also deeply human. Within the order, fear, coercion, and self-preservation forced some to confess falsely, while others resisted until their deaths. The knights were not mere symbols. They were men, bound by oaths, struggling against impossible odds, betrayed by the very world they had sworn to serve. The psychological toll was immense, as loyalty clashed with survival, courage clashed with despair, and faith clashed with the seeming cruelty of a world determined to extinguish them. The night of arrests, the subsequent trials, and the relentless political pressure created a maelstrom of emotion, a drama that echoed far beyond the walls of any castle or dungeon. Philip IV and his allies succeeded in destroying the Templars as a visible power, but they could not erase the order's enduring legacy. The secrets, the treasures, and the knowledge the knights had protected began to seed myths, legends, and speculation that have persisted for centuries. Stories of hidden gold, sacred relics, and forbidden knowledge fueled the imagination of those who came after. Treasure hunters, historians, and dreamers alike have pursued the echoes of the Templars, seeking to uncover what was hidden from the world. The betrayal, in this sense, did not end the story. It transformed it, giving rise to mysteries that endure even today. The events of 1307 also underscore the fragile interplay between power, fear, and secrecy. The Templars had risen above ordinary authority, wielded influence across kingdoms, and safeguarded knowledge beyond comprehension. Yet this very power made them a target. Their fall illustrates how even the most disciplined, devoted, and seemingly untouchable organizations are vulnerable to human ambition and political intrigue. The order's disappearance from public view was not a simple conclusion. It was a carefully orchestrated act of historical erasure, one that left behind tantalizing fragments and whispered stories that continue to captivate the imagination. In the end, the betrayal of the Templars is as much about human nature as it is about history. It is a story of ambition, fear, and envy colliding with devotion, discipline, and secrecy. It is a reminder that the greatest treasures, whether material, spiritual, or intellectual, can become targets when others perceive them as threats. And it is a prelude to the mysteries that would follow. Treasures hidden in secret vaults, relics transported to distant lands, and knowledge preserved for centuries in shadows, waiting for those bold enough to seek them. The order may have been dismantled, but its legend, its secrets, and its allure endured, echoing across time like a faint yet persistent whisper that refuses to be silenced. The trials of the Knights Templar were unlike any in history, a chilling spectacle of power, fear, and manipulation. Across France, dungeons filled with stone, damp walls, and flickering torchlight became theaters of human endurance and despair. The knights, once proud defenders of pilgrims and guardians of sacred relics, now found themselves reduced to prisoners of suspicion, caught in a web of accusations that were as elaborate as they were terrifying. Every step, every word, every hesitation was scrutinized, twisted, and turned into evidence of heresy. The very men who had been paragons of faith and courage were forced to confront the possibility that the world they had served so diligently now regarded them as traitors to God. Philip IV's plan was as meticulous as it was ruthless. Orders were sent to arrest Templars simultaneously, ensuring that escape or coordinated defense was impossible. Knights were stripped of their mantles and armor, their dignity shattered with precision. The charges were staggering. Heresy, idolatry, blasphemy, secret rites, and unnatural acts that violated both religious law and human morality. Some allegations were implausible, others terrifyingly specific. Knights were asked to confess publicly, to admit to practices that seemed grotesque and impossible. Yet the shadow of the king's influence hung heavy over the proceedings. Confession or denial mattered little. The machinery of betrayal had already begun its inexorable course. Torture became the primary instrument of compliance. Knights were subjected to methods designed to break both body and spirit. Suspended by the wrists, bound in irons, or beaten until words of submission fell from their lips, they endured pain that few could imagine. Some held fast, enduring with stoic determination, while others, overwhelmed by the agony, confessed to acts they had never committed. The confessions, extracted under duress, became tools in a carefully orchestrated narrative, justifying the eradication of the order in the eyes of both the church and the public. Yet even in the face of unimaginable suffering, a profound dignity persisted. The knights remained, in essence, the same men who had protected pilgrims and guarded relics with unwavering faith. The human drama of these trials is staggering. Imagine a knight, accustomed to the discipline of war and prayer, kneeling in a damp cell, listening to the cries of those around him while faced with impossible choices: endure and die slowly, or betray the oaths he had taken before God. Some whispered to one another in the dark, offering encouragement or solace, while others fell silent, retreating into the sanctity of their inner faith. Letters sent secretly to allies outside the prison spoke of courage and despair in equal measure. In the shadows of these dungeons, the Templars confronted the fragility of human endurance, the cruelty of ambition, and the cost of secrets too powerful to reveal. Despite the horrors, not all knights yielded. Stories survive of individuals who resisted until death, refusing to speak lies or admit to crimes they had not committed. Their courage became a quiet act of defiance, a testament to the strength of faith and the depth of loyalty that had guided the order for centuries. Even as executioners prepared for burning at the stake, some knights faced their fate with serenity, holding the memory of the Holy Land, their brothers, and their sacred mission close to their hearts. These acts of resistance would echo through history, shaping the perception of the Templars as martyrs as well as warriors. The trials were as much about perception as punishment. Philip IV understood that the destruction of the order required not just physical eradication, but moral and spiritual delegitimization. Chronicles written under the king's influence depicted the Templars as corrupt, decadent, and dangerous. Tales of blasphemy and sacrilege spread across Europe, designed to sever public loyalty and weaken the order's alliances. Even in regions far from France, doubt began to creep into minds that had once held the Templars in awe. The order's carefully cultivated image of invincibility and divine favor was systematically dismantled, replaced by suspicion, fear, and moral condemnation. Yet beneath the layers of manipulation, the Templars' secrecy endured. While kings and inquisitors sought to uncover every hidden relic, scroll, and treasure, the knights had anticipated danger. Wealth was hidden in forests, mountains, and remote castles. Sacred artifacts were concealed beneath floors, behind walls, and even transported across seas to distant lands. Documents detailing knowledge from the Holy Land, coded maps, and manuscripts that could alter understanding of faith or history were preserved in ways designed to withstand scrutiny. In this way, the trials, while devastating, did not completely sever the order from its legacy. The Templars' foresight ensured that some treasures and truths would survive, waiting for those who dared to seek them centuries later. The psychological and emotional toll on the knights cannot be overstated. Years of service, discipline, and faith were tested against the machinery of betrayal and political manipulation. Friendships were strained, loyalties tested, and courage measured in the crucible of fear and pain. Even the most steadfast found themselves questioning the limits of endurance, the justice of kings, and the nature of divine protection. It was a trial not only of body but of spirit, a confrontation with mortality, legacy, and the consequences of power kept too long in human hands. The confessions, often obtained through the most brutal methods, created a paradox. They validated the charges in the eyes of authorities, yet they also left an undeniable testament to the human cost of ambition and betrayal. Each forced admission became a story of endurance and tragedy, a record of men who had devoted their lives to a cause higher than themselves, only to be torn down by envy and fear. In a way, these trials transformed the Templars into legends. Their suffering, their courage, and their secrecy became intertwined with the myth of the order, ensuring that their story would endure long after the cells were emptied and the flames extinguished. The trials also exposed the fragility of earthly power. Philip IV and his allies wielded authority with ruthless efficiency, but they could not destroy the essence of the Templars, their knowledge, their legacy, and the mythos that surrounded them. Even in confinement, the Knights' devotion to secrecy and faith created a tension that authorities could not fully control. Rumors persisted, stories of hidden gold and sacred relics circulated, and the seeds of mystery were sown in the public imagination. The trials, meant to obliterate the order, paradoxically elevated it, transforming its history into legend. By the time the last confessions were recorded and the final sentences carried out, the Templars had been broken as an institution, yet their spirit endured. Their trials, marked by torture, manipulation, and betrayal, became more than historical events. They became a mirror reflecting human ambition, fear, and resilience. And while kings sought to erase them, the Order's secrets, treasures, and knowledge had already begun their journey into legend, waiting for discovery, speculation, and the relentless curiosity of those who would follow in their footsteps centuries later. The executions of the Knights Templar were grim spectacles, calculated to instill fear and erase a legacy. Yet they did the opposite. Across Europe, the flames of pyres consumed men who had once been the guardians of pilgrims, the protectors of sacred relics, and the keepers of secrets older than most kingdoms. The smell of smoke and charred timber mixed with the murmured prayers of the condemned, creating a scene of terrifying devotion. Despite the fire and the torment, many knights faced their deaths with remarkable serenity, holding fast to faith and oaths that could not be broken, even under the most excruciating circumstances. The most infamous of these executions occurred in Paris, on a cold morning in 1314. Jacques de Molay, the Grand Master of the Order, was brought to the center of the city with other senior knights. Their faces were pale but resolute, eyes reflecting a lifetime of service, courage, and secrecy. The crowd, both curious and fearful, watched as men who had once commanded armies and guarded kings were stripped of dignity and handed to the flames. Yet, in those final moments, the knights' composure transformed the act from simple execution to a defiance of mortal authority. Every movement, every word, every prayer they offered became a testament to endurance, courage, and the unwavering fidelity to their mission. Witnesses recorded that de Molay, standing amidst the smoke and heat, called out names of kings and popes, pronouncing curses upon those who had orchestrated the betrayal. Whether literal or symbolic, these words were remembered and retold across generations, adding to the mystique and power of the Templar legend. Flames could destroy bodies, but they could not extinguish stories, memories, or the resonance of faith tested to its limit. The martyrdom of the Templars transformed them into symbols of bravery, secrecy, devotion, and ultimately, injustice. But not all knights faced the flames in the open. Many were quietly executed in hidden cells, their deaths unnoticed by the public eye. Torture and deprivation preceded some of these executions, eroding the body but not necessarily the spirit. Others, fortunate or cunning enough, managed to escape, vanishing into remote castles, distant lands, or underground networks. These survivors carried with them fragments of the Order's treasures and secrets, ensuring that even as the organization was formally eradicated, its essence endured. The executions, rather than erasing the Templars entirely, inadvertently scattered their legacy across the continent, creating a network of mystery and legend that would endure for centuries. The psychological impact of these executions was profound, both for contemporaries and for posterity. People had witnessed men of faith and discipline brought low by political ambition and envy, raising difficult questions about power, justice, and morality. The Order's enemies celebrated. Yet even they could not entirely erase the awe inspired by the Knights' courage. The Templars had been men of immense training, discipline, and secrecy, yet in death, they demonstrated a different kind of strength, the moral courage to face annihilation without betraying their vows. Their martyrdom cemented their transformation from historical actors into icons, bridging the gap between reality and legend. The executions also ignited imagination and speculation. Rumors spread that some knights had smuggled relics out of France before the arrests, hiding them in forests, mountains, or distant kingdoms. Others claimed that secret documents detailing lost knowledge had been buried or transported to places beyond scrutiny. The narrative of disappearance and concealment became inseparable from the story of martyrdom. While kings and popes sought to obliterate the Order's presence, they could not destroy the mysteries it had protected, and these mysteries would grow in allure over the centuries. The Order's final acts of defiance also reinforced their spiritual significance. Even in the face of death, the Knights' commitment to their vows and to God remained unshaken. Their execution was not merely punishment, it was a statement of autonomy and faith that transcended mortal authority. The Templars' discipline, courage, and secrecy, once tools of military and financial power, had become instruments of legend, demonstrating that the human spirit, fortified by purpose and faith, could endure even the most brutal betrayals. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the executions is the contrast between power and vulnerability. The Templars had commanded armies, held vast wealth, and guarded sacred knowledge, yet they were ultimately human, subject to the machinations of kings, popes, and rivals. Their downfall underscores a universal truth. Even the most disciplined, devoted, and seemingly untouchable organizations are vulnerable to ambition, envy, and political cunning. Yet within that vulnerability lies the very element that transforms them into legend: their ability to inspire awe and curiosity long after they have been destroyed physically. In death, the Templars' treasures, knowledge, and secrets became even more tantalizing. Historians, explorers, and treasure hunters alike speculated endlessly. Where had the Order hidden its wealth? What sacred relics had been smuggled away? Which manuscripts, maps, or scrolls had survived? Every unanswered question became a thread connecting the Templars to future generations, ensuring that the Order's influence extended far beyond the years of its formal existence. The executions, rather than extinguishing their story, amplified it, creating a narrative that combined sacrifice, mystery, and the relentless pursuit of the unknown. Even today, the image of Templars facing the flames resonates with a strange, almost magnetic power. It represents the ultimate convergence of courage, secrecy, faith, and human endurance. The fire consumed bodies but could not destroy purpose, vision, or legend. From the ashes emerged a story that would captivate artists, writers, and historians alike. One in which the Templars' bravery and secrecy became inseparable from the mysteries they had protected. Their martyrdom created a bridge between history and myth, giving rise to stories of hidden treasures, sacred relics, and knowledge so profound that it might forever alter understanding if uncovered. The executions also serve as a reminder that history is rarely a simple record of events. It is shaped by power, ambition, fear, and secrecy, and the story of the Templars exemplifies this truth. Kings sought to eliminate them, but the human fascination with the unknown, the forbidden, and the sacred ensured that the Templars' legacy would endure. The Order's final moments, marked by courage and martyrdom, were not an end. They were the beginning of a legend that would span centuries, inspiring awe, fear, and relentless curiosity. And so, as the last flames died down, and the echoes of prayer and defiance faded into history, the Knights Templar were no longer simply men. They became symbols of devotion, secrecy, courage, and the enduring allure of the hidden. Their executions, meant to erase, instead immortalized them, leaving behind questions, legends, and mysteries that continue to intrigue the world to this very day. The Order's story did not end in the fire. It began anew in whispers, in speculation, and in the relentless search for the treasures and secrets that might still survive somewhere, hidden from sight waiting for those bold enough to seek them. Even as the flames consumed the bodies of the condemned, the treasures and secrets of the Knights Templar did not vanish. Across Europe, whispers of hidden vaults, secret passageways, and stashed relics began to circulate, forming a tapestry of mystery that continues to captivate the imagination. The Order, ever meticulous and secretive, had anticipated the possibility of betrayal and eradication. Generations of knights had prepared contingencies, ensuring that their wealth, sacred objects, and arcane knowledge could survive even the most ruthless political purge. What remained after the executions was not mere rumor. It was the shadow of a deliberate strategy to preserve power beyond the reach of kings, popes, and inquisitors. In the countryside of France, deep beneath forests and hills, lie stories of vaults concealed behind hidden doors, in caves, and under the foundations of abandoned monasteries. Some of these vaults were architectural marvels, constructed to withstand time, decay, and even the scrutiny of enemy eyes. Stone corridors twisted like labyrinths, chambers were sealed with intricate locks, and inscriptions encoded clues known only to the initiated. The Templars, trained in both warfare and secrecy, treated their treasures not as possessions, but as sacred trusts, protected with the same discipline and devotion they had shown on the battlefield. It was not just France that became the repository of Templar secrets. Knights who had escaped the purge reportedly carried treasures to Scotland, Portugal, and the Iberian Peninsula, regions that offered both relative safety and sympathetic allies. Castles, abbeys, and remote estates became temporary shelters for sacred relics, gold, and manuscripts. Some artifacts were intentionally hidden in plain sight, integrated into churches or cathedrals, where they could remain undisturbed for centuries. The movement of these treasures was careful, deliberate, and shrouded in secrecy, a dance of shadows designed to ensure survival even as the order itself was being dismantled. Among the most intriguing aspects of this dispersal is the careful selection of what to preserve and what to sacrifice. Precious metals, jewels, and sacred relics were transported with extreme caution, often separated to prevent discovery. Scrolls, manuscripts, and maps, repositories of knowledge gathered from the Holy Land and beyond, were copied, encoded, and hidden in locations where only the most trusted could retrieve them. In some cases, knights left cryptic clues, symbols, or markers to guide future generations in reclaiming the treasures. This deliberate strategy ensured that the essence of the order, the combination of wealth, wisdom, and sacred purpose, could endure even if its physical presence was obliterated. Portugal became one of the most notable refuges for fleeing Templars. The Order of Christ, formed as a successor organization under royal protection, allowed former Templars to continue their mission, albeit under a different guise. Manuscripts, maps, and treasures found new homes, shielded from inquisitors and kings who might covet them. In Scotland, rumors of hidden Templar caches inspired legends of secret chambers beneath castles and monasteries. Even remote regions of Spain were said to contain concealed relics, gold, and documents preserved by sympathetic nobles and surviving knights. Across Europe, the pattern was consistent. The Templars' treasures were never abandoned. They were strategically dispersed, ensuring survival in secrecy. The treasures themselves were diverse, encompassing material wealth, sacred relics, and knowledge beyond comprehension. Gold and jewels were obvious markers of power, but equally important were manuscripts containing philosophical, religious, and scientific knowledge, as well as maps detailing trade routes, crusader movements, and forgotten cities. Some scrolls were encoded, written in ciphers known only to the initiated, blending religious devotion with intellectual ingenuity. Sacred relics, chalices, fragments of the true cross, and perhaps even items connected to the Holy Grail, were preserved in conditions that suggested meticulous care and reverence. Each item represented a piece of the Templars' identity, a fragment of their mission, and a key to understanding the depth of their legacy. The movement of these treasures required not only careful planning but also an intimate knowledge of geography, politics, and human behavior. Knights had to anticipate the movements of kings, the scrutiny of inquisitors, and the curiosity of locals. Routes were chosen with care, stops were brief and secure, and records were often misleading or destroyed. The very act of preserving treasures became an extension of the Templars' discipline and secrecy, a final mission executed with precision, even as their order collapsed around them. The art of hiding became as vital as the art of war, and the strategy ensured that the Templars' influence would ripple across time, long after their visible presence had vanished. Legends suggest that some treasures were never intended to be reclaimed quickly, designed instead to remain hidden for centuries, waiting for those who possessed the knowledge and courage to find them. Certain maps, symbols, and encoded manuscripts were scattered across Europe, creating a puzzle that could only be solved by those initiated in the Order's deepest mysteries. Some scholars argue that these hidden treasures influenced political, religious, and even scientific developments over subsequent centuries, subtly shaping the course of history in ways that cannot be fully traced. The Templars' foresight allowed their legacy to persist, not in grandeur or dominance, but in secrecy and influence. Stories of lost Templar treasure also contributed to enduring myths and speculation. Tales of gold buried beneath abbeys, secret chambers and castles, and relics hidden in obscure locations became popular among adventurers, historians, and seekers of the esoteric. Some treasure hunters claimed to follow encoded maps and cryptic inscriptions left by surviving knights. Others suggested that the treasures were moved further afield, to the Americas, to remote islands, or even into the vaults of secret societies. While many of these claims cannot be verified, the persistence of these stories underscores the profound impact of the Templars' meticulous secrecy and the allure of treasures that may still exist, hidden and waiting. Yet perhaps the most significant aspect of this dispersal is not the gold, jewels, or relics themselves, but the knowledge encoded within them. Manuscripts describing sacred geometry, astronomical observations, alchemical processes, and theological insights may have survived the purge. Encoded scrolls and hidden texts preserved wisdom that could challenge contemporary understanding of history, religion, or science. In some cases, these hidden archives may have influenced other secretive organizations, intellectual movements, and political strategies over the centuries, creating a subtle but enduring footprint of the Templars in human history. The dispersal of treasures and secrets, carefully orchestrated, ensured that the Templars' influence could not be entirely erased. Kings and popes may have destroyed the visible order, but they could not extinguish what had been hidden with such care. The legacy of the Knights lived on in clandestine vaults, encoded manuscripts, and the whispers of legends passed from generation to generation. This strategic preservation created a tension that continues to fascinate the modern imagination. A vanished order whose treasures, knowledge, and secrets remain tantalizingly out of reach, a puzzle waiting for those audacious enough to pursue it. In essence, the dispersal of the Templar treasures was a final act of discipline, secrecy, and foresight. It transformed the order from a visible power into a legend, from warriors of faith into guardians of hidden knowledge. The order's collapse did not mark the end of influence. It marked the beginning of a legacy, one scattered across Europe, encoded in cryptic manuscripts, hidden in remote vaults, and whispered through generations. The Templars had vanished from the public eye, but their treasures, secrets, and enduring mystique ensured that their story, and the allure of what they had hidden, would continue to captivate the world for centuries to come. The treasures of the Knights Templar were as varied as they were enigmatic, a collection of objects and knowledge that transcended simple wealth. Gold and jewels were obvious markers of power, yet the Order's true treasures were often far more subtle artifacts imbued with spiritual significance, relics that connected them to the sacred history of the Holy Land, and manuscripts containing wisdom that few could fully comprehend. To the Templars, these items were not merely possessions. They were symbols of faith, tools of devotion, and keys to understanding mysteries that stretched back to antiquity. Every chest, every scroll, every golden chalice carried a story, a purpose, and a secret meant to endure beyond the trials of the material world. Among the most famous and most elusive of these relics is the Holy Grail. Some accounts suggest that the Templars came into possession of a chalice believed to have held the blood of Christ, hidden carefully in the vaults beneath their fortresses. The Grail, in legend, was more than an object. It was a conduit of divine power, a symbol of faith so profound that its existence alone inspired devotion, wonder, and speculation. The Templars' careful stewardship of such an artifact would have required both reverence and secrecy, guarding it against those who might exploit or misunderstand its significance. Whether purely symbolic or imbued with mystical power, the Grail represents the spiritual dimension of the Order's treasures, a dimension that transcends material wealth and captures the imagination of generations. Equally captivating are the relics associated with the True Cross. Knights returning from the Holy Land reportedly carried fragments of the cross upon which Christ was crucified, preserved in ornate reliquaries. These pieces were not displayed publicly but safeguarded with the utmost care, often transported across borders and hidden in monasteries or secret vaults. Possessing even a fragment of the True Cross elevated the Order's spiritual authority and provided a tangible connection to the divine history they had sworn to protect. Such relics were not mere ornaments. They were powerful symbols of faith, capable of inspiring devotion and awe, while simultaneously fueling rumors and intrigue about the Templars' secret holdings. The Templars' treasures were not confined to relics alone. Manuscripts, maps, and coded documents formed another layer of their legacy. Scrolls detailing the architecture of Solomon's Temple, astronomical observations, or mystical doctrines were preserved with extreme caution. Some texts contained encoded instructions or allegories, accessible only to those initiated into the deepest mysteries of the Order. Maps indicated trade routes, hidden strongholds, or potential resting places of sacred objects, blending practical knowledge with spiritual significance. In this way, the Templars' intellectual treasures were inseparable from their material ones, each informing and enhancing the other, creating a multidimensional legacy that extended far beyond ordinary notions of wealth. Gold and silver, though material, also played a role that was both practical and symbolic. The Order's coffers contained vast quantities of precious metals, collected from donations, trade, and spoils of war. These reserves funded their fortresses, armies, and charitable works, but they were also carefully concealed, moved, or hidden in anticipation of threats. Knights had learned, through experience in the Holy Land, that treasure without secrecy was vulnerable. Fortresses were constructed with hidden vaults, secret compartments, and underground tunnels to protect the most valuable objects. Wealth became not just a resource but a shield, a way to maintain autonomy and influence in a world where power often determined survival. Some treasures, however, were shrouded in more mystical and enigmatic qualities. Alchemical objects, symbols of esoteric knowledge, and ritual implements reportedly found their way into Templar hands. These items suggest that the Order was not only a military and religious organization but also a custodian of hidden wisdom, blending spiritual devotion with intellectual curiosity. Objects imbued with symbolism, geometric carvings, mystical diagrams, or encoded inscriptions, might have contained knowledge of ancient practices, cosmic observations, or philosophical insights inaccessible to the uninitiated. The interplay of the mystical and material reveals a dimension of the Templar legacy that is rarely understood, a deliberate intertwining of faith, intellect, and secrecy. Stories of lost treasures have fueled centuries of speculation and legend. Some claim that Templar gold was transported to Scotland or hidden beneath cathedrals, while others argue that sacred relics were sent to Portugal under the protection of the Order of Christ. Certain manuscripts, containing what some believe to be forbidden knowledge or esoteric insights, may have influenced secret societies, scholars, and explorers in later centuries. Even if the exact contents of the Templars' vaults remain unknown, the enduring fascination with their treasures attests to the extraordinary care, devotion, and secrecy with which they were preserved. The allure of these treasures is enhanced by the stories of their protection and concealment. Knights who survived the purge of the Order became custodians, moving relics and wealth across Europe to locations that would withstand scrutiny for generations. Hidden chambers, crypts beneath churches, and remote castles became repositories for sacred objects and gold, creating a complex web of secrecy that has yet to be fully unraveled. This deliberate dispersal ensured that even if the Order itself was annihilated, its treasures would continue to influence, inspire, and mystify those who sought them. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of the Templars' treasures is their capacity to inspire wonder, devotion, and speculation simultaneously. They are objects of faith, tools of intellect, symbols of secrecy, and artifacts of human ambition. Every chalice, every fragment of the true cross, every encoded manuscript carries layers of meaning, historical, spiritual, and mystical. The treasures themselves become a narrative, a story of a group of men who dedicated their lives to a mission far greater than personal gain, who combined courage, discipline, and devotion with an understanding that the preservation of knowledge and sacred objects might shape the future in ways no one could yet comprehend. In the end, the treasures of the Knights Templar are more than gold, relics, or manuscripts. They are a testament to faith tested in fire, to secrecy forged in adversity, and to the human desire to protect what is sacred from those who would exploit or destroy it. They embody the Order's enduring mystique, bridging the gap between history and legend, the tangible and the spiritual, the material and the mystical. To seek the treasures of the Templars is to glimpse the interplay of courage, devotion, and hidden knowledge, a story that continues to captivate the imagination and challenge the boundaries of what is known about the past. Among the most mysterious and captivating aspects of the Knights Templar legacy are the hidden manuscripts, codices, and cryptic writings that survived the purge of the Order. These were not merely books or scrolls. They were repositories of knowledge, meticulously encoded, layered with symbolism, and intended for the eyes of the initiated alone. Within their pages lay the collective wisdom of centuries, drawn from the Holy Land, the esoteric teachings of the Middle Ages, and perhaps even older traditions preserved by the Templars' predecessors. Each manuscript represented a bridge between the sacred and the secret, a map of spiritual, philosophical, and practical knowledge carefully guarded against the corruption or curiosity of the unworthy. Many of these manuscripts reportedly contain descriptions of rituals, ceremonies, and meditative practices designed to enhance understanding of divine principles. These were not merely ceremonial. They were considered transformative, capable of guiding the practitioner toward insight, discipline, and perhaps even revelation. Cryptic symbols, intricate diagrams, and encoded instructions required a deep understanding of theology, geometry, and philosophy to interpret. To the uninitiated, the pages appeared as abstract scribbles, mysterious figures, or indecipherable codes. To the Templars, they were keys to wisdom that could shape human thought, illuminate hidden truths, and safeguard the spiritual treasures of the Order from corruption or misuse. Other manuscripts appear to have contained detailed records of the Order's experiences in the Holy Land, including maps, inventories, and accounts of relics, treasures, and secret sites discovered beneath the ancient temples of Jerusalem. These records were painstakingly detailed, noting locations, dimensions, and even celestial alignments. Such precision suggests that the Templars intended not only to preserve history, but to guide future generations in the retrieval, protection, or understanding of these sacred and mysterious objects. The manuscripts were living tools, blending historical accuracy with secrecy and spiritual insight, bridging the material and the metaphysical in ways that scholars continue to speculate upon even today. Encoding was central to the preservation of these secrets. The Templars employed ciphers, hidden codes, and symbolic languages to shield the contents from prying eyes. Letters, numbers, and diagrams were interwoven with theological symbolism, creating layers of meaning accessible only to those trained in the Order's secret arts. The interplay of language, geometry, and ritual ensured that the manuscripts were not merely protected physically, but intellectually and spiritually. Only through initiation, study, and discipline could one hope to unravel the knowledge contained within. To outsiders, the texts seemed impenetrable, and even centuries later, many remain undeciphered, adding to the aura of mystery surrounding the Templar legacy. Some scholars believe that these manuscripts also contained esoteric knowledge relating to alchemy, astrology, and the properties of natural materials. Alchemical symbols, coded diagrams, and cryptic annotations suggest that the Templars explored the intersection of science and spirituality long before these disciplines were formally defined. Whether these practices were intended for practical applications or for metaphysical understanding is a matter of debate, but the existence of such knowledge underscores the intellectual breadth of the order. They were not merely warriors or administrators. They were scholars, preservers of wisdom, and seekers of truths that spanned both the physical and spiritual realms. The manuscripts also reflect an extraordinary understanding of architecture, engineering, and sacred geometry. Some texts describe the precise construction of fortresses, churches, and hidden vaults, incorporating principles of symmetry, alignment, and proportionality that resonate with cosmic or spiritual significance. The Templars' meticulous attention to structure extended beyond practical defense. It was a reflection of their belief in the harmony between human endeavor, divine order, and the natural world. Their architectural knowledge, preserved in these hidden writings, has fascinated historians, architects, and mystics alike, hinting at insights that may have influenced sacred constructions for centuries. Rumors persist that some manuscripts held knowledge so profound it could change perception of history or faith itself. Encoded accounts of lost relics, secret ceremonies, or hidden chambers beneath Jerusalem's temples are said to have survived, suggesting that the Templars' custodianship was as much intellectual and spiritual as it was material. Even if the claims are exaggerated, the manuscript's very existence reinforces the notion that the order's treasures were not solely gold or relics but knowledge of extraordinary depth. They were instruments of power, insight, and preservation, capable of guiding the order and its successors across generations, even after the order was officially dissolved. The dispersal of these manuscripts after the fall of the Templars was deliberate. Knights fleeing persecution carried selected texts to Portugal, Scotland, and other regions of Europe, often hiding them in monasteries, castles, and private estates. Some were entrusted to sympathetic nobles, clergy, or scholars who could preserve the knowledge in secrecy. Others were encoded further, creating an additional layer of protection for future generations. This careful distribution ensured that even as the order disappeared from the public eye, its intellectual and spiritual legacy could endure, accessible only to those with the dedication, knowledge, and courage to seek it. The mystique of the manuscripts has endured for centuries, fueling legends, speculation, and scholarly debate. Some believe they contain instructions for accessing lost treasures, while others suggest they preserve rituals and teachings of a mystical or philosophical nature. Secret societies and esoteric groups, inspired by the Templars' legacy, have sought these texts, hoping to unlock hidden knowledge or reclaim spiritual power. Modern historians continue to investigate their existence, but the deliberate secrecy of the Templars makes verification difficult. The very difficulty of access only heightens the allure, creating a sense of wonder, suspense, and reverence around the order's intellectual heritage. Ultimately, the Templars' hidden manuscripts represent more than historical records. They embody the convergence of faith, discipline, and secrecy that define the order. They are tools of wisdom, records of devotion, and vessels of mystery, preserved against the tides of human ambition and political intrigue. To study them is to glimpse the Templars' worldview, a delicate balance between earthly duty and spiritual pursuit, between visible deeds and hidden knowledge, between material treasure and the eternal truths they sought to protect. They remind us that the greatest legacies are often those hidden from sight, carried forward in silence, waiting for those who are both bold and patient enough to discover them. The Knights Templar were masters not only of combat and finance, but of secrecy and coded communication. Among the most fascinating aspects of their legacy are the intricate ciphers, codes, and secret symbols that permeated every level of the order. These were not simple cryptic messages. They were a sophisticated language designed to convey instructions, preserve sacred knowledge, and protect the order's most valuable secrets from outsiders. To understand the Templar codes is to step into a world where letters, numbers, and symbols were imbued with layered meaning, a world in which knowledge itself was a weapon and a shield. Templar ciphers ranged from simple substitution codes to complex systems integrating letters, numbers, and geometric symbols. Some manuscripts employed multiple layers of encryption, requiring not only linguistic skill but also mathematical understanding and familiarity with theological symbolism. These ciphers were not arbitrary, Each was carefully constructed to prevent accidental discovery or misinterpretation. Only those initiated into the deepest mysteries of the order could fully decode the messages. For the uninitiated, the manuscripts appeared as impenetrable riddles, puzzling symbols, or strange geometric designs, their purpose and meaning entirely hidden behind layers of knowledge the Templars guarded with vigilance. Beyond written ciphers, the Templars developed a visual language encoded into architecture, relics, and ceremonial objects. Symbols carved into stone, hidden in tapestries, or etched onto ritual implements conveyed information about locations, spiritual practices, and even treasure. A cross, a circle, or a series of geometric shapes could serve as a key to unlock a map, indicate the location of a hidden vault, or provide instruction for a sacred ritual. In this sense, secrecy was woven into every facet of Templar life, a constant reminder that knowledge was a responsibility as much as a privilege. Misinterpretation or exposure could be catastrophic, and so the codes were as protective as they were instructive. One of the most compelling aspects of these secret languages is their integration with sacred and mystical knowledge. Letters, numbers, and symbols were often associated with spiritual concepts, biblical references, or astronomical phenomena. A sequence of letters might correspond to a date of significance, a star alignment, or a ritual step. Geometric shapes could reflect sacred proportions, echoing principles of divine order that the Templars believed underpinned both the cosmos and their earthly mission. In this way, codes were not merely practical. They were spiritual, a reflection of the Templars' belief that the universe itself could be interpreted and understood through careful observation, discipline, and faith. Some codes were designed to protect knowledge of treasures and relics. Locations of hidden gold, manuscripts, or sacred artifacts were often encoded within documents that outwardly appeared mundane. A map might seem to indicate a simple landscape, yet within the angles of its lines, the placement of symbols, or the sequence of letters lay precise instructions only accessible to the initiated. These codes ensured that treasures could survive centuries of scrutiny, political upheaval, and persecution. Even as kings destroyed the order and burned its members, the hidden keys to their wealth and knowledge persisted, preserved by encryption that only a select few could decode. The Templars' use of ciphers also extended to their organizational communications. Letters sent between commanders, priories, and distant fortresses frequently employed coded language, often hiding not just material concerns but strategic, spiritual, and political information. This ensured that correspondence could not be intercepted and misused by rival powers or inquisitors. Even today, historians and cryptographers marvel at the sophistication of these systems, noting that the Templars operated with a level of intelligence security centuries ahead of their time. The very survival of their secrets depended on this mastery of coded communication, which became as crucial to the order's longevity as swords or armor. The complexity of the Templars' codes has fueled centuries of speculation. Some scholars believe that certain manuscripts contain multi-layered encryptions, combining linguistic, numeric, and symbolic ciphers to create messages of extraordinary depth. Others argue that the codes may conceal instructions for rituals, guidance to hidden treasures, or spiritual knowledge that challenges conventional understanding. The difficulty in interpreting these ciphers has inspired generations of treasure hunters, historians, and esoteric scholars, each seeking to unlock secrets that the order deliberately obscured from the uninitiated. In this way, the codes became both a tool and a legacy, a means of preserving influence beyond the physical existence of the order. The psychological dimension of the Templars' secrecy should not be underestimated. Codes, symbols, and secret languages created a sense of belonging, discipline, and hierarchy within the order. Only those who demonstrated devotion, understanding, and trustworthiness could access the most sacred knowledge. This structure reinforced loyalty and ensured that secrets were not carelessly divulged. It also created an aura of mystique around the order, enhancing its power in the eyes of both allies and adversaries. Knowledge became both a weapon and a test, a measure of readiness to participate in a mission that was as spiritual as it was martial. Even centuries later, the impact of Templar codes resonates. Researchers and cryptographers continue to analyze surviving manuscripts, relics, and architectural markers in hopes of decoding messages that might reveal treasures, hidden rituals, or insights into the Order's worldview. Some believe that these codes were not merely practical but deliberately designed to challenge and guide future generations, a testament to the Order's belief that wisdom must be earned. The interplay of secrecy, knowledge, and symbolism ensures that the Templars' legacy is not static. It evolves with each attempt to understand, interpret, or uncover the hidden truths encoded in their artifacts. Ultimately, the Templars' ciphers and secret languages reflect the very essence of the Order, a disciplined pursuit of divine purpose, protected by secrecy, and communicated through intellect and faith. They remind us that knowledge can be a treasure as potent as gold, that understanding requires discipline and devotion, and that some mysteries are preserved not to be hoarded, but to challenge, inspire, and endure. The codes of the Templars are more than puzzles. They are bridges between the past and present, gateways to hidden wisdom, and enduring symbols of an order that sought to guard the sacred against the ravages of time, ambition, and ignorance. The fortresses of the Knights Templar were marvels of medieval engineering, built not only to withstand armies, but also to safeguard secrets, treasures, and sacred knowledge. Across Europe and the Holy Land, these structures were designed with multiple layers of defense. High stone walls, reinforced gates, secret passages, and concealed chambers. To the casual observer, they appeared as formidable military strongholds, but to the initiated, they were repositories of faith, intelligence, and clandestine operations. Every archway, spiral staircase, and vaulted chamber served a dual purpose: protection against enemies and concealment of the Order's most precious assets. Some fortresses were constructed atop hills or cliffs, their locations chosen for strategic advantage and isolation. These remote positions ensured control over surrounding lands and roads, allowing the Templars to monitor pilgrim routes, merchant caravans, and potential invaders. Beneath the visible walls, hidden tunnels wound like veins, connecting armories, chapels, and living quarters to secret vaults buried deep beneath the surface. Only the knights and those trained in the Order's secrets could navigate these labyrinthine corridors safely. To outsiders, these passages might appear chaotic or inaccessible, but for the Templars, they were meticulously planned, enabling both defense and concealment of the Order's treasures and sacred relics. Within these fortresses lay chambers that were deliberately obscured from view. False walls, hidden doors, and cleverly disguised trapdoors led to vaults containing gold, manuscripts, and religious relics. Some vaults were protected with intricate locks, coded inscriptions, or symbolic markers that could only be understood by those initiated into the Order's deepest mysteries. These hidden rooms were not merely storage spaces. They were sanctuaries of knowledge, spiritual practice, and security. The Templars' architectural ingenuity ensured that, even if a fortress fell to invaders, the most valuable treasures and documents could remain undiscovered for generations. One of the most intriguing aspects of Templar fortresses is their integration of sacred geometry and mystical design principles. Chapels, halls, and even private chambers were often constructed according to proportions believed to reflect cosmic or divine order. This design was not purely aesthetic. It reinforced the spiritual mission of the knights, creating spaces that aligned with celestial patterns, facilitated meditation and prayer, and encoded secret knowledge. Symbols carved into walls, floors, and arches often carried layers of meaning: guidance for rituals, protection of treasures, or clues to hidden passages. In this way, architecture itself became a language, a tool of secrecy, and a vessel of sacred knowledge. The fortresses were also hubs of intelligence and communication. The knights maintained networks of scouts, messengers, and informants, ensuring that information about threats, trade, and religious developments flowed efficiently. Secret chambers were sometimes used to intercept correspondence, protect encrypted documents, or conduct clandestine meetings. These hidden spaces allowed the Templars to operate effectively even under the scrutiny of kings, popes, and rival powers. The combination of military strength, strategic intelligence, and secret architecture made their fortresses formidable both physically and intellectually, reflecting the Order's dual commitment to faith and survival. In some regions, Templar fortresses were linked by underground networks that extended beyond individual castles. Caves, tunnels, and hidden passageways connected estates, monasteries, and remote fortifications, allowing knights to move undetected, transport treasures, and communicate in secrecy. These networks were often engineered to be self-sufficient, incorporating wells, ventilation shafts, and hidden exits. Maps of these underground routes were encoded in manuscripts, symbols, or oral traditions, ensuring that only the initiated could navigate them safely. Such connectivity allowed the Templars to preserve continuity even when facing persecution, enabling the survival of their treasures, knowledge, and mission. Legends suggest that some fortresses contain chambers designed for initiation ceremonies, mystical rites, or esoteric instruction. These spaces were carefully concealed, often beneath chapels or within the thickest walls, accessible only through secret passages or by solving intricate symbolic puzzles. Within these chambers, the knights could engage in spiritual practices, pass on sacred knowledge, or safeguard relics in an environment isolated from both physical and political threats. The combination of secrecy, symbolism, and spiritual purpose highlights how Templar architecture functioned as more than military infrastructure. It was a medium through which the order preserved its identity, discipline, and sacred mission. The concealment of treasures within these fortresses was a deliberate and sophisticated strategy. Gold, silver, and jewels were often hidden in chambers that required multiple keys or sequences to access. Manuscripts and maps were placed in alcoves, behind false walls, or beneath floors, sometimes accompanied by encoded instructions or cryptic markers. Sacred relics, including chalices and fragments of the true cross, were protected in reliquaries secured in secret compartments, sometimes requiring knowledge of celestial alignments or symbolic sequences to locate. The Templars' careful planning ensured that even if an entire fortress were captured or destroyed, its most valuable contents could survive undetected for centuries. Even in the Holy Land, Templar fortresses were designed with secrecy in mind. Strongholds in Jerusalem, Acre, and other key cities included hidden vaults, underground chapels, and escape tunnels. Some scholars suggest that maps, relics, and manuscripts were deliberately concealed beneath floors, behind altars, or in subterranean chambers, awaiting a future generation of knights or worthy seekers. The combination of religious devotion, strategic intelligence, and architectural ingenuity allowed the Templars to operate as both a military and spiritual force, preserving their treasures and secrets in a manner that transcended the ordinary practices of medieval orders. The legacy of Templar fortresses continues to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters. Many of the buildings still stand, though some are in ruins, their secrets hidden behind centuries of decay, restoration, or reconstruction. Archaeological investigations occasionally uncover hidden rooms, tunnels, or cryptic inscriptions, offering tantalizing glimpses of what remains concealed. Each discovery raises new questions. How many treasures are yet undiscovered? Which manuscripts have survived? What spiritual or ritual practices were preserved in these hidden spaces? The fortresses themselves remain both monuments and mysteries, silent witnesses to a vanished order whose influence persists in the hidden architecture of Europe and the Holy Land. Ultimately, the fortresses and their secret chambers are emblematic of the Templars' genius, discipline, and foresight. They reflect an understanding that true power lies not only in swords or gold, but in knowledge, secrecy, and faith. These hidden spaces preserve treasures, manuscripts, and relics against the tides of history, ensuring that the order's legacy could survive political intrigue, persecution, and the passage of centuries. In the shadows of stone walls and beneath vaulted ceilings, the Templars left a tangible record of their mission, a testament to courage, devotion, and the enduring allure of what lies hidden, waiting to be discovered by those bold enough to seek it. The Knights Templar were more than warriors and custodians of sacred relics. They were pioneers of medieval finance, operating a network that spanned Europe and the Holy Land. Long before modern banking systems existed, the Templars developed methods to store, transfer, and protect wealth with unmatched efficiency. Their financial acumen was legendary, and it became one of the reasons they were feared as much as admired. Kings, nobles, and merchants entrusted them with gold, property, and valuables, confident that the order's discipline, secrecy, and integrity would safeguard their assets. What began as a practical solution for funding the Crusades evolved into an intricate system that blurred the lines between faith, strategy, and power. The Templars' banking operations were revolutionary for their time. Pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land could deposit valuables at a local priory and receive a letter of credit or a token that allowed them to withdraw equivalent funds at distant Templar estates. This innovation reduced the dangers of carrying gold across treacherous terrain, including bandits, hostile territories, and political checkpoints. At the same time, it allowed the order to consolidate and manage wealth with unprecedented control, creating financial reserves that could fund armies, fortresses, and the construction of churches and monasteries. The system was efficient, secure, and deeply tied to the Templars' disciplined code of conduct, blending practicality with a spiritual sense of stewardship. The order's financial networks extended beyond simple deposits and transfers. They acted as lenders to kings, nobles, and even popes, providing loans for wars, infrastructure, and political ventures. This gave the Templars enormous influence, as indebted rulers were often constrained by obligations to repay the order. While the Knights' wealth enabled charitable works, the funding of military campaigns, and the construction of fortresses, it also made them powerful players in the complex political landscape of medieval Europe. Their financial expertise, coupled with their reputation for secrecy and loyalty, created both respect and envy, setting the stage for future conflicts that would culminate in their dramatic downfall. Templar wealth was not confined to coin and bullion. The order accumulated land, estates, and strategic properties across Europe, often concealed from the eyes of rival powers. Some properties were disguised as simple farms or monasteries, but beneath the surface, they were centers of finance, storage, and administration. Valuable commodities, including grain, wine, textiles, and trade goods, were managed with the same discipline applied to gold and silver. By integrating tangible assets with financial instruments, the Templars created a self-sustaining system that ensured both the material and operational survival of the order. Each priory, estate, or fortress became a node in a network of wealth that extended far beyond its visible borders. Secret vaults and chambers within Templar estates were used not only for sacred relics but also for storing gold, gemstones, and important documents. Ledgers, account books, and coded manuscripts detailed deposits, withdrawals, and loans, often written in ciphers or symbolic shorthand to protect sensitive information. The combination of encryption, dispersed storage, and careful oversight allowed the Templars to maintain the integrity of their financial operations, even under threat from external powers. The preservation of wealth was therefore not just a matter of accumulation, it was an extension of the order's discipline, secrecy, and strategic foresight. The order's financial power also allowed them to influence political and military outcomes. By providing loans to rulers, the Templars could indirectly shape wars, negotiations, and territorial disputes. Their wealth enabled the rapid mobilization of resources, including funds, arms, and supplies, in ways few contemporaries could rival. This intersection of finance, strategy, and faith gave the order a unique position. They were spiritual warriors, military strategists, and bankers all at once. Their influence was subtle yet pervasive, a shadow force that could affect the course of kingdoms while remaining largely invisible to the untrained eye. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of Templar wealth is the mystery surrounding its ultimate fate. When the order was dissolved, a substantial portion of its assets disappeared without trace. Some gold and silver were seized by the crown or the church, but much vanished, hidden in secret vaults, underground chambers, or remote fortresses. Legends suggest that surviving knights transported wealth to Scotland, Portugal, and other regions, creating a dispersed treasure network that remains the subject of speculation and treasure hunts to this day. The combination of material value, sacred relics, and encoded documents has fueled centuries of fascination, conspiracy theories, and relentless searching for the hidden treasures of the Templars. The financial system of the Templars was intertwined with their spiritual mission. Wealth was not hoarded for its own sake. It was a tool to protect the order, defend pilgrims, fund crusades, and safeguard sacred relics. Their meticulous record-keeping, secret codes, and secure vaults were extensions of their discipline and devotion. Every coin, manuscript, and property was part of a broader purpose, a careful balance between temporal and spiritual responsibility. This duality of material and sacred stewardship reinforced the order's identity and ensured that its influence endured even as political enemies sought to destroy it. The disappearance of Templar wealth also inspired myths and speculation about secret caches. Some treasure hunters believe that hidden vaults contain gold, manuscripts, and relics yet undiscovered. Others suggest that the order's wealth was used to fund the survival of clandestine networks, secret societies, or esoteric missions after the order's formal dissolution. While much remains conjecture, the very existence of these legends underscores the depth of the Templars' ingenuity and the foresight with which they managed their assets. The financial legacy of the order is not merely a story of money. It is a story of secrecy, strategy, and survival. In essence, the Templars' financial network reflects the broader genius of the order, a combination of discipline, intelligence, and foresight applied across military, spiritual, and economic domains. Their ability to manage wealth, protect sacred treasures, and maintain secrecy under pressure exemplifies why the order's influence persisted long after its apparent destruction. The banks, vaults, and hidden ledgers were more than tools of commerce. They were instruments of power, guardians of faith, and keys to mysteries that continue to captivate the imagination. Through their financial acumen, the Templars ensured that even in exile, persecution, or death, their influence, their secrets, and their treasures would endure, waiting for those bold enough to follow the trail. The Knights Templar vanished from public view centuries ago, yet their legend refuses to fade. Long after the order's dissolution, stories of hidden treasures, sacred relics, and secret manuscripts have captivated imaginations, inspiring both scholarly inquiry and daring speculation. These myths are not mere fanciful tales. They are the echoes of a meticulously hidden legacy, amplified over centuries by secrecy, rumor, and human fascination with the unknown. Each whispered account of Templar gold, cryptic manuscripts, or lost relics fuels the idea that somewhere, hidden beneath earth, stone, or time itself, lie secrets that could alter the course of history, or at least our understanding of it. The allure of lost Templar treasure is pervasive in folklore, literature, and modern pop culture. Stories abound of golden caches buried beneath abbeys, secret chambers within castles, and sacred relics transported to remote corners of Europe. Scotland, Portugal, and Spain often appear as the most likely refuges, their landscapes dotted with fortresses, monasteries, and estates once controlled by surviving knights. Some legends even reach as far as the Americas, suggesting that the Templars carried artifacts across the ocean in secret expeditions, hidden in ships, chests, or the hands of loyal followers. While the evidence is fragmentary, the consistency of these stories points to a deliberate dispersal of treasure, a web of secrecy designed to endure beyond the reach of kings, popes, and inquisitors. Among the most enduring myths is the idea that the Templars possessed items of profound spiritual power. The Holy Grail, fragments of the True Cross, and sacred manuscripts are said to be hidden in vaults whose entrances have been lost to time. These relics are more than objects. They symbolize a bridge between the earthly and the divine, between mortal understanding and eternal mystery. Stories suggest that the guardianship of such items was not merely for protection but for preparation, ensuring that knowledge and faith could survive even if the order itself was destroyed. The very existence of these myths conveys the extraordinary care and foresight of the Templars, turning legend into a lens through which we glimpse their strategic genius. Secret societies and esoteric groups have long been fascinated by these legends. From the Freemasons to Rosicrucians, many claim inspiration, rituals, or hidden knowledge originating in the Templars' clandestine teachings. Manuscripts, coded symbols, and architectural traces allegedly passed from surviving knights to these groups, preserving fragments of the order's wisdom. While historical evidence is often scant, the symbolic and ritualistic echoes of Templar influence in these societies suggest that their legacy persisted not just materially, but intellectually and spiritually. The myths of treasure, knowledge, and secret rites intertwine, creating a narrative that blurs the boundary between history and legend. The mysteries surrounding Templar wealth also fueled centuries of conspiracy theories. Some argue that the order accumulated knowledge so powerful it threatened monarchs, the church, and the political order, prompting their sudden and brutal eradication. Other theories suggest that their dispersed treasures, both material and intellectual, were used to finance secret missions, influence politics, or support clandestine agendas. While these claims cannot be fully verified, they illustrate the extraordinary influence attributed to the Templars and the extent to which their carefully preserved assets could continue to shape events even in exile. The tension between historical fact and speculative legend gives their story a timeless, almost cinematic quality, where the pursuit of truth becomes an adventure in its own right. Archaeological discoveries have occasionally lent credence to Templar myths. Hidden chambers, tunnels, and cryptic inscriptions have been uncovered beneath abbeys and castles, confirming that the order possessed the architectural ingenuity to conceal objects and knowledge. Scholars have documented manuscripts and coded texts attributed to the Templars, revealing evidence of both intellectual sophistication and esoteric practice. These tangible traces, combined with the oral histories and folklore passed through generations, create a web of clues suggesting that some treasures, material, intellectual, or spiritual, may indeed remain hidden. Each discovery sparks renewed fascination and fuels the ongoing quest to uncover what lies beneath centuries of secrecy. The myths surrounding Templar treasures are also deeply entwined with human psychology. Stories of hidden gold, sacred relics, or lost wisdom evoke awe, desire, and a sense of mystery that transcends ordinary life. They speak to the universal allure of secrets and the thrill of discovery, capturing the imagination of historians, adventurers, and treasure hunters alike. The Templars' deliberate use of secrecy, encoded manuscripts, and hidden chambers ensures that these myths endure, inviting each new generation to participate in a narrative that is simultaneously historical and legendary. It is a story that promises rewards, both tangible and intellectual, to those bold enough to search. Some modern researchers propose that Templar myths may contain kernels of truth obscured by centuries of exaggeration. Maps, manuscripts, and cryptic symbols may encode directions to surviving treasures, while architectural features in abbeys and castles hint at concealed vaults. Historical records suggest that surviving knights moved gold, relics, and documents to safer regions, creating dispersed networks that are difficult to trace. Even if not every legend is factual, the persistence of these stories indicates that the Templars' careful planning allowed their legacy to survive in forms that continue to captivate the human imagination. The legends also inspire philosophical reflection. What would it mean if the Templars' hidden treasures were ever found? Would the world gain insights into medieval knowledge, spirituality, or political strategy that could reshape our understanding of history? The very possibility stirs wonder, inviting contemplation of the ways in which secrecy, loyalty, and discipline intersected to preserve extraordinary knowledge. In this sense, the myths serve not only as entertainment or mystery, but as a bridge connecting past ingenuity with present curiosity, encouraging exploration, study, and imagination. Ultimately, the myths, legends, and modern conspiracies surrounding the Templars' treasures reflect the enduring power of their story. They are tales of courage, faith, and foresight, of secrecy preserved across centuries, and of treasures, material, spiritual, and intellectual, that continue to evoke awe and speculation. Even in the absence of complete verification, the legends inspire a sense of connection to a vanished order, a reminder that some secrets endure not because they are inaccessible, but because they are worth protecting. The Templars may have disappeared from history, but their treasures, real or imagined, ensure that their legacy remains alive in the imagination, challenging us to ask, what if some secrets have truly withstood the test of time? The allure of the Knights Templars' hidden treasures has inspired adventurers, scholars, and treasure hunters for centuries. Even in the decades following the Order's dissolution, rumors of concealed gold, sacred relics, and cryptic manuscripts sparked expeditions across Europe and the Holy Land. From the snow-dusted hills of Scotland to the sun-baked landscapes of Portugal, countless seekers sought to unravel the mysteries left behind by a vanished order, driven by ambition, curiosity, or devotion. These early attempts were often perilous, requiring not only physical endurance but also intellectual skill, as the treasures were deliberately concealed behind layers of secrecy, encoded manuscripts, and hidden architecture. Some of the earliest known searches focused on France, the epicenter of the Templar persecution. Following the arrests in 1307, stories circulated that surviving knights had spirited away gold, silver, and relics to secret locations before authorities could seize them. Monasteries, castles, and estates across regions such as Poitou, Normandy, and Champagne became the subject of intense scrutiny. Hunters examined hidden chambers, underground passages, and cryptic inscriptions, sometimes with the cooperation of sympathetic locals who had witnessed the order's movements. Many expeditions were unsuccessful, thwarted by complex architecture, misleading markers, or the passage of centuries that had obscured the original hiding places. Yet these failures only fueled legend, reinforcing the idea that the Templar treasures were both formidable and nearly impossible to locate. Scotland became another focus of historical searches. Legend holds that the surviving Templars fled northward, seeking refuge in the remote highlands or among loyal noble families. The castle of Rosslyn, with its intricate carvings and mysterious symbolism, became a focal point of speculation. Researchers, historians, and amateur treasure hunters alike examined its crypts, tunnels, and architectural details, searching for hidden vaults or coded messages left by the order. Some believed that Rosslyn was part of a network of sites that concealed relics, manuscripts, or gold, forming a web of secrecy that spanned multiple countries. Though definitive evidence remains elusive, the persistence of these searches underscores the Templars' extraordinary foresight in protecting their treasures. Portugal, too, became a reputed haven for Templar treasures. Following the order's dissolution, many knights reportedly joined the newly established Order of Christ, bringing with them knowledge, wealth, and possibly sacred relics. Estates, fortresses, and monasteries associated with the order became sites of intense interest for those seeking the Templars' hidden wealth. Some historians suggest that manuscripts and coded documents were deliberately dispersed here to preserve both knowledge and treasure, creating an intricate network that could survive political upheaval. Modern researchers continue to examine architectural clues, archival records, and folklore for evidence, attempting to distinguish historical fact from centuries of legend. In addition to material treasure, adventurers have long pursued Templar manuscripts, ciphers, and encoded instructions that could reveal hidden vaults or sacred relics. These searches often required knowledge of medieval Latin, esoteric symbolism, and cryptography, blending intellectual challenge with the thrill of discovery. Historians and cryptographers have attempted to decode surviving texts, looking for hidden patterns, numerical sequences, or symbolic references to treasure locations. Though few manuscripts have yielded concrete results, each attempt has illuminated aspects of Templar knowledge, offering glimpses into the sophistication and foresight with which the order protected its secrets. Many modern treasure hunters have also ventured into the terrain of legend, combining historical research with adventure tourism, metal detecting, and archaeological excavation. Sites associated with the Templars are explored with careful attention to tunnels, underground vaults, and hidden chambers, often guided by local lore or centuries-old manuscripts. Some searches have uncovered coins, artifacts, or architectural anomalies that suggest the presence of hidden caches, though none have definitively revealed the legendary treasures described in historical accounts. These expeditions continue to blend science, intuition, and imagination, reflecting the enduring fascination with a vanished order whose secrets remain tantalizingly out of reach. Treasure hunters are not motivated solely by material wealth. For some, the quest is spiritual or intellectual, a desire to connect with the Templars' faith, discipline, and esoteric knowledge. Hidden relics, sacred manuscripts, or encoded maps are viewed as keys to understanding a worldview that combine devotion, courage, and secrecy. In this sense, Every expedition becomes not only a hunt for treasure but also a search for insight into the mindset and mission of the order. The act of seeking becomes a bridge to the past, a way to experience, however briefly, the discipline, intelligence, and spiritual focus that define the Templars. Throughout history, many attempts to recover Templar treasures have ended in failure, frustration, or even disaster. Misinterpretation of symbols, false leads, and the sheer difficulty of navigating medieval architecture have thwarted countless seekers. Yet each failed expedition adds layers to the legend, reinforcing the narrative that the Templar treasures were deliberately protected by a combination of intellect, strategy, and spiritual foresight. The difficulty of discovery ensures that these stories remain alive, compelling successive generations to take up the search, driven by both hope and curiosity. Even today, the Templars' treasures continue to captivate treasure hunters, historians, and curious minds. From online forums analyzing historical records to sophisticated archaeological teams exploring ancient fortresses, the quest persists. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and 3D mapping have opened new possibilities for locating hidden chambers or tunnels, blending modern technology with centuries-old intrigue. Yet despite these advances, the treasures remain elusive, preserving the mystery and allure that have defined the Templars' legacy for over 700 years. The enduring fascination with Templar treasure reveals a timeless human trait: the desire to uncover what has been hidden, to challenge history, and to experience the thrill of discovery. The Order's careful concealment, encoded manuscripts, and architectural ingenuity ensured that this quest would span generations, transforming the search into a narrative that is as much about human curiosity and ambition as it is about material gain. Each attempt, successful or not, keeps the story alive, connecting the modern world with a vanished order whose influence and mystique refuse to fade. Ultimately, the historical attempts and modern treasure hunts underscore the genius of the Templars' foresight. They did not merely amass wealth and knowledge. They designed a legacy meant to endure, hidden yet perceptible, challenging yet attainable, mysterious yet deeply alluring. To search for their treasures is to participate in a story that blends history, legend, and human imagination. A story that continues to unfold, inviting each new generation to ask, what secrets lie hidden, and who will be bold enough to uncover them? The mysteries of the Knights Templar have transcended history, embedding themselves deep into literature, popular culture, and the collective imagination. From the earliest chronicles to contemporary novels and films, the Order has been depicted as a society of unparalleled secrecy, spiritual devotion, and hidden power. Their story, already steeped in intrigue, has become a canvas onto which writers, filmmakers, and storytellers project tales of lost treasures, coded manuscripts, and conspiracies that bridge past and present. Every depiction, whether grounded in historical research or creative speculation, reinforces the sense that the Templars were guardians of secrets too profound for ordinary understanding, tantalizing generations with the promise of discovery. Early historical texts painted the Templars as both heroes and heretics. Chronicles of the Crusades praised their courage, discipline, and devotion, portraying them as unwavering defenders of Christendom. Yet, with their dramatic arrest, trial, and dissolution in 1307, narratives shifted toward suspicion, intrigue, and scandal. Medieval and Renaissance writers speculated about the hidden knowledge and wealth of the Order, fueling rumors that would endure for centuries. These early accounts laid the foundation for the Templar mythos, blending fact and conjecture into a tapestry of legend that continues to captivate historians, treasure hunters, and readers alike. In literature, the Templars have inspired countless stories of mystery and adventure. Novels like those by Sir Walter Scott and later modern thrillers depict the knights as keepers of secret knowledge, protectors of sacred relics, and participants in clandestine rituals. Authors explore themes of loyalty, betrayal, courage, and faith, often intertwining historical events with imagined adventures, secret codes, and hidden treasures. These fictional accounts, while imaginative, often draw on real historical elements. The Order's financial networks, fortresses, and encoded manuscripts, creating a bridge between history and legend that blurs the line between fact and fantasy. The fascination with Templar secrecy also found its way into modern conspiracy theories and popular culture. Films, video games, and television series frequently portray the Knights as mysterious figures guarding world-altering knowledge or hidden treasure. Symbols, secret codes, and lost relics are recurring motifs, reinforcing the idea that the Templars were not only warriors but custodians of wisdom capable of challenging established power. These portrayals appeal to a universal human desire for discovery, adventure, and understanding of the unknown, transforming the historical knights into enduring icons of mystery and intrigue. Artistic depictions further amplify the myth of the Templars. Paintings, engravings, and architectural studies often highlight the order's mystique, emphasizing secret symbols, ceremonial robes, and sacred architecture. The imagery conveys discipline, devotion, and the aura of secrecy, embedding the Templars into cultural consciousness as figures both heroic and enigmatic. This visual representation, coupled with stories of lost treasures and encoded manuscripts, ensures that their legacy resonates beyond historical texts, capturing imagination across generations and mediums. The Templars' influence in literature and culture is not limited to direct references. Secret societies, esoteric traditions, and symbolic organizations often draw inspiration from the order's rituals, codes, and hierarchical structure. Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other groups have claimed lineage, philosophical inheritance, or symbolic connection to the Templars, creating a network of ideas and practices that continues to inform cultural and spiritual thought. In this sense, the Templar mythos extends far beyond historical events, shaping beliefs, art, and storytelling in subtle yet profound ways. Modern thrillers and historical mysteries continue to explore Templar legends with renewed intensity. Novels and films often combine historical research with imaginative speculation, weaving narratives that include secret manuscripts, lost relics, and hidden fortresses. Stories may involve treasure hunters, scholars, or spiritual seekers attempting to decode symbols, follow ancient maps, or uncover underground vaults. Each narrative reinforces the allure of the Templars as keepers of secrets, emphasizing their intelligence, discipline, and foresight, while inviting audiences to participate in the adventure vicariously. The intersection of history and myth also allows the Templars to function as symbols of broader human themes: faith, courage, loyalty, and the pursuit of knowledge. Their story raises questions about the balance of power, the cost of secrecy, and the relationship between material wealth and spiritual purpose. By exploring these themes, literature and popular culture not only entertain but provoke reflection, suggesting that the Templars' legacy is as much philosophical as it is historical. Their encoded manuscripts, hidden fortresses, and legendary treasures become metaphors for hidden truths, ethical dilemmas, and the mysteries that endure beyond the reach of time. Moreover, the continued fascination with the Templars in popular culture underscores a deeper human attraction to secrets and hidden knowledge. People are drawn to stories where ordinary individuals might stumble upon extraordinary truths, where perseverance, intellect, and courage are rewarded with revelation. The Templars' historical reality, a disciplined, secretive order guarding wealth, relics, and manuscripts, provides the perfect foundation for these narratives, grounding imagination in tangible historical context while leaving room for speculation and wonder. In academic circles, the Templars inspire serious study as well as cultural exploration. Historians examine their military campaigns, economic networks, architectural achievements, and spiritual practices, providing evidence-based insight into their operations. Simultaneously, cultural scholars analyze how the order has been mythologized, tracing the evolution of Templar imagery in literature, art, and media. This dual approach, factual and interpretive, highlights the Templars' unique position at the intersection of history and legend, demonstrating how a vanished order continues to shape human imagination centuries after its disappearance. Ultimately, the Templars' influence in literature and popular culture reflects the enduring power of mystery, secrecy, and human curiosity. They serve as symbols of hidden knowledge, lost treasures, and the intersection of faith, intellect, and discipline. Through novels, films, art, and scholarly research, the story of the Templars continues to captivate, reminding us that some legacies endure not through monuments or manuscripts alone, but through the imagination they inspire. The myths, legends, and creative interpretations of the order invite each generation to explore, question, and dream, preserving the Templars not merely as historical figures, but as enduring icons of mystery, courage, and the human desire to uncover what is hidden. The Knights Templar were not merely a military order. Their legacy resonates deeply within the realm of secrecy, mysticism, and esoteric knowledge. Over the centuries, scholars and enthusiasts alike have speculated that the order maintained connections with hidden traditions and secret societies, transmitting knowledge that went far beyond military tactics or financial acumen. The idea is both tantalizing and enigmatic. An organization that combined discipline, faith, and intelligence could have been a custodian of knowledge so profound. It influenced spiritual and mystical currents long after the order itself vanished. These connections, whether direct or symbolic, invite exploration of the Templars not only as historical figures, but as key players in a hidden web of esoteric wisdom. Some researchers argue that the Templars absorbed teachings from ancient mystical traditions encountered during the Crusades. In the Holy Land, Knights would have come into contact with Jewish, Islamic, and Byzantine knowledge, ranging from sacred texts and numerology to alchemical practices and architectural secrets. The integration of these teachings into their own spiritual and operational framework suggests that the Templars were not solely focused on conquest. They sought understanding, blending faith with knowledge in a way that could be preserved and transmitted. This pursuit of wisdom, shrouded in secrecy, may explain why so much of their practices, symbols, and codes remain elusive even today. The order's use of encoded manuscripts, cryptic symbols, and hidden chambers implies that they had knowledge intended for select initiates only. Such secrecy is characteristic of esoteric traditions, where understanding is revealed gradually to those who demonstrate discipline, loyalty, and insight. Some scholars speculate that the Templars transmitted this knowledge through ritual, teaching, and symbolic architecture, ensuring that their wisdom would survive even if the order itself was destroyed. This approach reflects a sophisticated understanding of pedagogy, secrecy, and the preservation of sacred knowledge, where every symbol, cipher, or architectural feature becomes a vessel for transmission. Connections between the Templars and later secret societies have fueled much speculation. Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and other esoteric movements are often cited as inheritors of Templar teachings, rituals, and symbolic frameworks. Freemasonic lodges, for instance, employ symbols reminiscent of Templar imagery, and some traditions claim a historical lineage tracing back to surviving knights. While evidence is often circumstantial, the thematic and symbolic parallels suggest that Templar knowledge may have influenced these groups, providing spiritual and philosophical foundations that endured long after the medieval order ceased to exist. These societies, whether intentionally or through legend, became stewards of the Templars' esoteric legacy, ensuring that secrets of ritual, discipline, and sacred geometry continued to shape human thought. Mystical traditions associated with the Templars often emphasize the pursuit of hidden truth. Legends suggest that the order was entrusted with relics, manuscripts, and sacred knowledge that revealed insights into the divine, the cosmos, and the human soul. This knowledge, encoded in symbols, architecture, and ritual, required careful interpretation. The preservation of such wisdom demanded secrecy, which, in turn, fostered myths of hidden chambers, secret vaults, and cryptic codes. The mystique surrounding the Templars arises not only from their material treasures, but from the intellectual and spiritual treasures they may have safeguarded, bridging history and esoteric philosophy in ways that continue to captivate seekers. The esoteric dimension of Templar practice is evident in their architecture, ceremonial objects, and iconography. Chapels and fortresses often incorporated sacred geometry, celestial alignments, and symbolic carvings. Ritual implements and manuscripts carried coded symbols, suggesting a system of teaching that transcended ordinary literacy. In this sense, the Templars' environment, both physical and spiritual, was designed to convey knowledge subtly, guiding initiates through observation, discipline, and interpretation. Each element was part of a larger tapestry, a hidden curriculum that required dedication, intellect, and faith to understand. Historians and esoteric scholars also suggest that the Templars' financial and operational networks were part of this transmission. Wealth, property, and correspondence were often encoded, ensuring that knowledge could move safely across regions while remaining protected from outsiders. Some researchers argue that surviving manuscripts and architectural symbols may encode lessons in philosophy, mathematics, or cosmology, blending practical instruction with spiritual insight. These interpretations suggest that the order functioned as both a guardian of material resources and a transmitter of intellectual and mystical wisdom, with secrecy serving as both protection and pedagogy. The Templars' reputed connections to mystical traditions and secret societies raise broader questions about the continuity of esoteric knowledge. Could surviving knights have influenced Renaissance thinkers, scientific inquiry, or spiritual movements in Europe? Were certain symbols, rituals, or manuscripts deliberately preserved to guide future generations in understanding hidden truths? While definitive proof is elusive, the recurring motifs in architecture, literature, and secret society traditions suggest that the Templars' influence extended far beyond their immediate military and religious role. They may have acted as custodians of a hidden wisdom intended to endure, shaping spiritual and philosophical thought across centuries. Modern fascination with Templar esoterica reflects this enduring allure. Researchers, spiritual seekers, and conspiracy theorists alike explore the possibility that the order held knowledge capable of altering religious, philosophical, or even scientific understanding. Their codes, symbols, and hidden chambers are interpreted not merely as historical curiosities, but as conduits to understanding a worldview that combined faith, intellect, and discipline. The Templars' secrecy, far from being mere cunning, may have been a method of preserving knowledge whose significance could only be revealed gradually to those prepared to seek it with devotion and insight. Ultimately, the Templars' esoteric connections remind us that the order was more than a military force. They were visionaries of secrecy, intelligence, and spiritual discipline, preserving knowledge that may have bridged civilizations, religions, and mystical traditions. Their coded manuscripts, hidden chambers, and symbolic architecture serve as silent witnesses to this intellectual legacy, challenging historians and seekers alike to decipher the full extent of what they safeguarded. The allure of the Templars endures not only because of hidden treasure but because of the possibility that they held knowledge, wisdom, philosophy, and spiritual insight that continues to inspire curiosity, wonder, and reverence even 7 centuries after their dramatic fall. The downfall of the Knights Templar was as dramatic as it was devastating, a storm that swept through Europe with calculated precision and left the order shattered. It began not with the clash of swords on distant battlefields but with the quiet machinations of power, greed, and fear. In the early 14th century, the Templars had grown immensely wealthy and influential, their fortresses and estates dotting the landscape of Europe and the Holy Land. Kings and popes alike had come to rely on them for financial support, military prowess, and political counsel. Yet it was precisely this combination of power and secrecy that sowed the seeds of their undoing. King Philip IV of France, known as Philip the Fair, was deeply indebted to the Templars. Their financial resources, amassed through loans, estates, and their innovative banking system, gave them leverage over even the most powerful monarchs. Philip, desperate to consolidate his power and eliminate his debts, looked upon the Templars not as allies but as a threat. Rumors of heresy, blasphemy, and secret rituals had long circulated, whispered in royal courts and among the populace. Whether these claims were grounded in truth or fueled by envy and fear, they provided a convenient pretext for Philip to act decisively against the order. On a chilling morning in October 1307, Philip orchestrated a simultaneous arrest of Templars across France. Knights were seized from their castles, monasteries, and estates, often in the dead of night. Torches flickered in the dark corridors as men who had once commanded armies and guarded sacred relics were dragged before inquisitors. The arrests were swift, brutal, and meticulously coordinated, leaving the order stunned and unprepared. Within weeks, Templars faced charges of heresy, idolatry, and sacrilege. Accusations that seemed to many implausible, given their centuries of pious service and unwavering discipline. Yet, under the weight of torture, fear, and political manipulation, many confessed, providing Philip with the justification he sought to dismantle the order. The trials of the Templars were a theater of power, spectacle, and terror. Knights were interrogated in dungeons lit by flickering torches, their confessions extracted through excruciating methods designed to break body and spirit. Many recanted their statements under duress, only to be subjected to further torment. Some were burned at the stake, their deaths a grim warning to others who might defy royal authority. The Church, under pressure from Philip, lent reluctant support, issuing papal bulls that sanctioned the persecution and dissolution of the order. Even Pope Clement V, whose loyalty to the papacy demanded caution, was ensnared in the political web, ultimately agreeing to suppress the order to maintain stability and appease the French crown. Despite the arrests and executions, the Templars resisted in pockets of Europe and the Holy Land. Fortresses and estates in remote regions held out, some knights fleeing to Scotland, Portugal, or other distant lands. Legends speak of hidden treasures transported under cover of darkness, manuscripts concealed in vaults, and sacred relics spirited away to unknown locations. These stories suggest that even as the order crumbled under persecution, the foresight, discipline, and secrecy that had defined the Templars allowed portions of their legacy, wealth, knowledge, and spiritual artifacts to survive. It was a final act of cunning and devotion, ensuring that the order's influence would endure in hidden forms. The dissolution of the Templars was formalized by papal decree in 1312, yet the ramifications echoed far beyond that date. Estates and properties were seized by the crown or transferred to other religious orders, while many knights faced imprisonment, execution, or forced exile. The abrupt eradication of an institution that had commanded loyalty across nations left a vacuum of power, influence, and mystery. Historians have long debated the motives behind the persecution. Was it purely political, driven by Philip's debts and ambition, or was it fueled by fear of the order's secret knowledge and wealth? Likely, it was a combination of factors, each amplifying the other in a web of intrigue, fear, and ambition. The psychological impact on surviving Templars and their contemporaries was profound. Men who had devoted their lives to faith, discipline, and service were suddenly cast as heretics and criminals. Families of knights faced stigma, confiscation of property, and social ostracism. Across Europe, the dramatic fall of an institution once considered untouchable became a cautionary tale of power, secrecy, and vulnerability. It revealed the fragility of even the most disciplined and organized orders when confronted with the convergence of political ambition, wealth, and fear. Yet the order's downfall did not erase its mysteries. Some knights went underground, preserving manuscripts, relics, and financial records in secret. Others allegedly joined emerging orders or sought refuge in distant lands, continuing the transmission of knowledge, ritual, and strategic expertise. These surviving fragments became the foundation for myths, legends, and secret societies that claimed inspiration from the Templars. In essence, the persecution that destroyed the order publicly may have inadvertently ensured the survival of its hidden legacy, seeding stories and conspiracies that would endure for centuries. The persecution of the Templars also illustrates the tension between institutional authority and moral integrity. Here was an order that had achieved extraordinary discipline, faith, and influence, brought down not by military defeat but by political calculation, fear, and greed. Their fall serves as a reminder of the precariousness of power, the dangers of envy, and the ways in which truth and reputation can be manipulated. It is a cautionary tale, resonating through history, about the vulnerability of even the most formidable institutions when confronted with the ambitions of kings and the machinations of courts. Legends that emerged from the order's downfall continue to captivate the imagination. Tales of hidden treasures, secret manuscripts, and spiritual knowledge lost to persecution persist in folklore, literature, and popular culture. Rosslyn Chapel, remote castles in Scotland, and monasteries in Portugal and France are all sites tied to these legends. their architecture and symbols whispering hints of secrets never fully revealed. Each stone, carving, and tunnel invite speculation. What did the Templars carry away in their final hours? Which relics, manuscripts, or treasures survived the purge, hidden from the world by men whose loyalty and foresight exceeded even their fear of death? In the end, the Templars' downfall was both absolute and incomplete. Their public demise, marked by torture, execution, and confiscation of wealth, obliterated their presence in the open world. Yet their hidden legacies, treasure, manuscripts, esoteric knowledge, and enduring symbols, continued to survive, scattered across Europe and preserved in stories, architecture, and secret traditions. The dramatic arc of their destruction adds a powerful emotional layer to their story. Courage confronted by injustice, devotion threatened by greed, and secrecy preserved in the shadow of persecution. The order that once commanded kings and popes now exists as both history and legend, a reminder that some legacies endure not through public triumph, but through the secrets carried quietly into the shadows. Even after the brutal dissolution of the Knights Templar, traces of their presence continued to ripple through Europe and beyond, whispering of a legacy that could not be entirely erased. Surviving knights, aware of the order's extraordinary knowledge, wealth, and sacred responsibilities, took extraordinary measures to preserve what they could. Some fled to distant lands, carrying with them manuscripts, relics, and secret instructions, safeguarding the order's spiritual and material treasures. In Portugal, for example, many Templars were absorbed into the Order of Christ, where they continued their work under a different name, ensuring that aspects of Templar practice, discipline, and wisdom endured, quietly shaping events in the shadows of history. Hidden relics, long thought lost, became focal points of legend and devotion. Reports of the Holy Grail, fragments of the True Cross, and other sacred artifacts persisted in obscure monasteries, private collections, and secret vaults. These items, more than mere objects of value, were symbols of a divine mission that the Templars believed transcended earthly power. Guardianship of such relics was not simply an act of preservation. It was an extension of their sacred duty, a trust passed down through secret lines that stretched across generations. The very act of hiding these items reinforced the Templars' meticulous discipline and their understanding of the fragility of faith and power in a world driven by ambition and greed. The surviving knights also ensured that their knowledge of strategy, architecture, and cryptography did not vanish. Coded manuscripts, diagrams of fortresses, and esoteric instructions were carefully concealed, sometimes embedded in seemingly mundane documents or carved into walls and stonework. These artifacts suggest that the Templars intended their wisdom to be preserved for those prepared to seek it, combining practical instruction with spiritual insight. Even after the Order's public destruction, this hidden knowledge allowed them to influence events subtly, through successors, protégés, or allied secret societies, leaving a legacy that was less visible but no less potent. Legends of hidden Templar vaults and treasure chambers persisted, drawing the attention of historians, adventurers, and conspiracy theorists alike. Some claim that vast caches of gold, sacred manuscripts, and relics were spirited away to Scotland, Portugal, or even distant corners of Europe, forming a web of dispersed treasures protected by the Order's surviving members. Other stories suggest that secret tunnels beneath monasteries, castles, and chapels conceal sacred artifacts, waiting for discovery by those able to interpret the Templars' symbols and codes. While much of this remains speculation, the consistency of these legends points to a deliberate strategy. The Templars intended that their most precious secrets survive beyond persecution, safeguarded in the shadows until the world was ready or worthy to uncover them. Beyond relics and treasure, the Templars' influence endured in practices and institutions that carried forward elements of their discipline and vision. Some historians argue that early financial systems, fortification designs, and even the principles of modern banking bear traces of Templar innovation. Their network of estates, priory fortresses, and communication systems demonstrated advanced logistical planning and organizational acumen, qualities that would inspire generations of military engineers, strategists, and administrators. In this way, the Order's influence subtly permeated society, shaping structures of power and knowledge long after its formal dissolution. Esoteric traditions also preserved Templar influence in spiritual and philosophical contexts. Secret societies such as the Freemasons and Rosicrucians, among others, have long been associated with Templar heritage, claiming inspiration from the order's rituals, codes, and principles. While the historical connection is often debated, these societies maintain practices, symbols, and teachings that echo the Templars' discipline, secrecy, and moral philosophy. Through these channels, the order's spiritual and intellectual legacy has transcended centuries, surviving in forms that continue to inspire inquiry, devotion, and curiosity. Some of the most compelling evidence of surviving Templar influence lies in architecture and sacred spaces. Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland, for instance, contains intricate carvings, symbolic motifs, and cryptic designs that many believe were inspired by Templar knowledge. Similar patterns appear in other European structures historically associated with the order, suggesting that architecture itself became a medium for transmitting encoded wisdom. These spaces functioned as silent repositories of knowledge, allowing the order to communicate lessons of faith, strategy, and morality across time and space, even as the public face of the order vanished. The endurance of Templar traditions also speaks to the resilience and foresight of the order. Men who had dedicated their lives to faith, discipline, and service ensured that their principles, knowledge, and treasures were not lost to history. Whether through secret societies, hidden manuscripts, or concealed relics, the Templars managed to influence events, thought, and imagination centuries after their fall. Their foresight transformed persecution into preservation, turning tragedy into a hidden triumph that continues to resonate in historical studies, folklore, and the popular imagination. Modern fascination with surviving Templar relics and traditions reflects both curiosity and awe. Scholars, treasure hunters, and enthusiasts meticulously study archives, symbols, and physical sites, searching for tangible connections to an order that existed 7 centuries ago. Each discovery, be it a manuscript, artifact, or architectural clue, offers a fleeting glimpse into a world that blended faith, strategy, and secrecy. Even as myths and speculation abound, the Templars' tangible influence persists, demonstrating how a disciplined, secretive organization can leave an indelible mark, not through conquest alone but through the careful preservation of knowledge and sacred responsibility. In essence, the surviving Templar traditions, hidden relics, and enduring influence illustrate the dual nature of their legacy. Visible in their architectural, financial, and strategic accomplishments, yet invisible in the form of hidden treasures, secret knowledge, and spiritual teachings. They exemplify a principle that defined the order itself. True power lies not only in what is seen but in what is preserved, protected, and transmitted across generations. Even centuries after their dissolution, the Templars' legacy challenges us to consider the endurance of faith, discipline, and wisdom in the face of persecution, and the possibility that some secrets, carefully guarded, may yet survive to reshape our understanding of history. The symbols of the Knights Templar are among the most enduring and enigmatic aspects of their legacy, quietly communicating knowledge, identity, and purpose across centuries. Every cross, seal, and architectural motif was more than mere decoration. It served as a cipher, a subtle mark of allegiance, or a repository of hidden wisdom. These symbols allowed the order to transmit messages, encode sacred truths, and preserve secrets, even in the face of persecution. To the untrained eye, they were ornaments or insignia. To the initiated, they were keys to understanding the order's philosophy, discipline, and hidden knowledge. Among the most recognizable symbols is the red cross on a white mantle, a powerful emblem of faith, courage, and sacrifice. Yet beneath its apparent simplicity lies a deeper significance. The cross represented the spiritual mission of the Knights, a visual reminder of their devotion to God and their willingness to face mortal danger for a higher purpose. Some historians and esoteric scholars suggest that subtle variations in the cross, its proportions, angles, and placement, encoded additional meanings, conveying messages about rank, secret missions, or doctrinal beliefs. Every mark, every line, carried potential layers of interpretation, a silent language woven into the fabric of the order's identity. Seals and inscriptions provide another dimension of symbolic communication. Templar seals often depict two knights riding a single horse, a striking image of unity, discipline, and humility. While seemingly straightforward, some interpretations suggest deeper philosophical or mystical connotations, reflecting the order's dedication to fraternal loyalty, shared purpose, and secrecy. Written inscriptions, too, were rarely mere statements of ownership or authority. They often included coded references to relics, treasures, or sacred teachings. These inscriptions could be embedded in legal documents, correspondence, or even on the walls of castles and chapels, ensuring that key knowledge survived in ways that were accessible only to those trained to interpret it. Architectural symbols in Templar buildings further illustrate their sophisticated approach to communication and preservation. Fortresses, chapels, and priories often incorporated geometric patterns, celestial alignments, and hidden motifs into their design. Staircases, archways, and columns were carefully proportioned, sometimes containing subtle carvings that echoed numerological or mystical principles. Such architectural elements were more than artistic expression. They served as teaching tools, mnemonic devices, or cryptic markers pointing to hidden chambers or sacred relics. For those with the insight to decipher them, these structures became living textbooks, encoding centuries of knowledge in stone, light, and shadow. Ciphers and coded manuscripts form yet another layer of Templar secrecy. Surviving texts hint at a sophisticated system of encoding messages, blending letters, numbers, and symbols to conceal sensitive information. Whether detailing treasure locations, operational instructions, or esoteric teachings, these manuscripts required a trained mind to unlock. Some historians argue that these codes were deliberately complex, designed to protect knowledge from outsiders while providing a secure method of transmission among trusted members. In this way, the Templars ensured that even if their physical holdings were seized, the essence of their knowledge could endure, hidden in plain sight. Many Templar symbols have persisted in later traditions, from secret societies to cultural motifs, leaving a trail of continuity that fuels modern fascination. The Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and other esoteric groups often incorporate motifs, rituals, and symbolic logic reminiscent of Templar design. Though the direct lineage is debated, the recurrence of specific symbols, numbers, and architectural forms suggests an intellectual inheritance, a transmission of ideas from medieval knights to later seekers of wisdom. These echoes reinforce the idea that Templar symbols were not only markers of identity but vehicles for preserving knowledge that transcended time and geography. Even commonplace objects associated with the Templars, coins, chalices, ceremonial implements, carry symbolic weight. Designs etched on metal or carved into would often depict celestial signs, numerological patterns, or allegorical imagery. Every artifact was both functional and instructive, a tangible representation of the order's philosophy, mission, and discipline. Historians and collectors studying these objects note recurring motifs that suggest an encoded system, one designed to communicate layered meanings to those trained in the order's traditions. This attention to detail reflects the Templars' understanding that knowledge, when encoded effectively, could survive persecution, relocation, or the erosion of time. The interpretation of Templar symbols has inspired centuries of speculation, research, and adventure. Some argue that maps, manuscripts, or architectural markers contain clues to lost treasures, sacred relics, or esoteric wisdom. Others suggest that these symbols represent philosophical or spiritual teachings, guiding initiates toward moral, intellectual, or mystical insight. The beauty of the Templars' symbolic language lies in its versatility. It could conceal, instruct, inspire, and endure simultaneously, speaking to both the practical and the transcendent. For historians and adventurers alike, decoding these symbols is an act of connection, linking present curiosity with centuries of hidden knowledge. Legends of hidden messages and secret codes have also inspired treasure hunters to seek Templar caches and vaults across Europe. From the crypts of France to the remote castles of Scotland and the sacred sites of Portugal, explorers examine carvings, alignments, and inscriptions for signs pointing to lost gold, manuscripts, or relics. Even when physical treasures remain elusive, The pursuit of these symbols invites profound engagement with the Templars' intellectual and spiritual legacy. Each clue, each cryptic design, becomes a doorway into the mindset of an order that valued secrecy, discipline, and wisdom above all else. Ultimately, the Templar symbols, codes, and hidden messages exemplify the enduring genius of an order that understood the power of subtlety. They transformed ordinary materials, stone, ink, metal, into vessels of secret knowledge, capable of surviving persecution, dispersion, and time itself. For the modern observer, these symbols offer more than historical curiosity. They are gateways to understanding a civilization of disciplined warriors and devoted monks, men who blended faith, intellect, and cunning to safeguard treasures both material and spiritual. The Templars' legacy lives not only in what can be seen or touched, but in the encoded wisdom they left behind, waiting for those willing to seek, interpret, and discover the layers hidden within their enduring symbols. Even centuries after their downfall, the Knights Templar continue to capture the imagination of historians, archaeologists, and treasure hunters. Across France, Scotland, and Portugal, researchers investigate commanderies, fortresses, and chapels, uncovering hidden chambers, cryptic carvings, and unusual structural features that hint at secrets left behind. Each artifact, coins, ceremonial implements, or manuscripts, offers a glimpse into the order's discipline, strategy, and spiritual devotion. In Scotland, Rosslyn Chapel draws fascination for its intricate carvings and potential hidden vaults, while Portuguese sites connected to the Order of Christ preserve traces of Templar influence. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, and 3D mapping have revealed concealed passages and anomalies, merging history with technology to trace the Order's lost treasures and manuscripts. Even when tangible treasures remain elusive, modern investigations shed light on the Templars' organization, architectural brilliance, and secretive methods. The thrill of discovery lies as much in understanding the ingenuity and foresight of the Knights as in locating hidden gold or relics. Through these explorations, the Templar legacy endures, proving that their influence, cleverly concealed and preserved, continues to resonate across the centuries. The Templars' dramatic rise and fall spawned a web of myths and conspiracy theories that endure to this day. Legends speak of lost treasures, sacred relics like the Holy Grail, and encoded manuscripts containing hidden knowledge. Stories suggest that surviving knights infiltrated other orders or influenced secret societies, such as the Freemasons, preserving fragments of the order's wisdom and rituals. Popular culture has amplified these myths, portraying the Templars as guardians of forbidden knowledge and hidden power. Literature, films, and games feature secret vaults, cryptic symbols, and ancient relics, blending history with imagination. Esoteric interpretations claim the order understood sacred geometry, numerology, or cosmic principles, embedding these secrets in architecture, manuscripts, and symbols. Even skeptics acknowledge the Templars' cultural impact. The legends, whether true or imagined, spark curiosity, research, and exploration. They remind us that history is not only what is recorded, but also what is hidden, protected, and preserved. The myths continue to invite wonder and reflection, keeping the order alive in the imagination and inspiring generations to question, explore, and seek the truths they may have left behind. The true power of the Knights Templar lies not in their downfall, but in the secrets and ideals they preserved. Even as persecution tore the order apart, hidden relics, encoded manuscripts, and cryptic symbols ensured their influence endured. These remnants reflect a vision that combined faith, courage, and discipline, extending far beyond earthly wealth or power. Their story is profoundly human. Men who swore vows of service yet faced betrayal, execution, and immense danger. Yet through foresight and secrecy, they safeguarded knowledge and treasures, leaving traces that continue to inspire scholars, adventurers, and historians. The Templars' legacy reminds us that true power is often hidden, preserved with care, and transmitted wisely. Their symbols, manuscripts, and architectural genius are invitations to explore, reflect, and wonder. Even in shadow, The Order's ideals endure, challenging us to see the extraordinary in the past and inspiring the pursuit of knowledge, faith, and courage in the present.